Well, hello everyone. Like last time, we're gonna give our fellows an extra 5-ish minutes to show up and settle down. Hello to everyone in the chat. Why are you uh Hi Echo. Hi Shub. Hello AGM. It's great seeing you all in the chat. Also be sure to give Echo an extra thanks because she will be drawing art again for our lovely entertainment. She was singing a song. She has reintroduced me to the wonderful Mr. Lunt from VeggieTales. He sings a cheeseburger song, if you didn't know. Also, be sure that you have a snack and some hydration nearby. I know I have my water bottle here. We will be taking questions at the end. This first stream will be the entirety of Act 1, because shockingly enough, Act 1 is the shortest part of the book. And then tomorrow we will begin Act 2. I shall also be drawing. Ah, yes. Spend this time to draw your fan art. Shadow. I also have a nice little blanket here. Yeah, that's right. I get cozy for these live readings. We all salute you in your drawing endeavors, Shub. Which, by the way, this is the second book in the ASTRIA trilogy. If you are behind and would like to catch up on the first book, Shadowbound has been read for free on the channel. You can find the playlist linked in the description of this live stream down below. It'll only take you 12 hours, maybe less, because there's also time at the end of each stream for Q&A. And despite what I say in all those streams, they are free! And so will Bloodbound. So feel free to share these audiobooks with whoever you think may be interested in the ASTRIA trilogy, but are probably like, I don't know if it's going to be right for me. And hey, while you're at it, it would be great if you bought the books. They're also linked in the description down below. Maybe you can even read along. I know a lot of people like to read while also listening to audiobooks. And the ebook is only $5 on Amazon. So you have no excuse. Shadow, maybe one of the most intimidating characters in the entire series, is going to have so much cute fan art. I want to see Shadow eating cake. A Shadow is like... It is so baby, but also it is so intimidating at the same time. I think Shadow is the best idea that I've ever had. Save for the entirety of the series, of course. Okay. We are going to transition into the book reading now, so sit back, relax, and thank you for being here. We will get to the Q&A and some of my other thoughts at the end. Bloodbound, written by Miria Greer. Act 1, Breach. Prologue. He had heard the stories of Corydon, but seeing it for himself is by far much different and much more nerve-wracking. The dark clouds, the dead land, the lack of beings, even the biting chill of the air makes him tense, always wary of his surroundings. The only light he has to keep himself company in this dreary place is his lightning, which arcs from his clothes in bright flashes. The white beams scorch the barren dirt path he walks alone, and off the trunks of the leafless trees that line the empty road forward. Ahead of him looms Corydon's ancient castle, its sheer size appearing more as a painting come to life than an actual building. Its tallest spire touches the dark sky above, the point of origin for the swirling black clouds. Its age is slowly starting to show. Crumbling stones and cracked balconies stand out on the large structure. What isn't slowly falling into physical decay is becoming dirty. Dark water streaks run down from the undersides of the windows, and at the points where the blocks of stone join together, making it appear as though the structure itself were weeping. If the theory he had been given proves to be correct, what he's looking for should be somewhere in there. Yet doubt grows in his mind with each step. His very being rejects wandering through such a dismal land, crying for him to turn around. He knows he shouldn't be here in the first place with the travel ban in effect. If he returns to Asandra now, he might not get into any trouble. A jolt of lightning sparks against something that stops it midair, creating a small pinprick of pain on the back of his hand as the energy rebounds back to him. He stops in his tracks and turns, staring deep into the shadow of a nearby tree. "Who's there?" he demands. No response, no movement, nothing. But his guard remains high. He knows that there's something there, something he can't see, but that his lightning can touch. His magic has never steered him wrong before. He raises a hand and releases a massive bolt of energy, lighting the land with its grandeur. When the beam fizzles out, the tree he targeted is now scorched. Impressive for an electromancer. The voice makes him jump and turn fully. Now standing in the path behind him is a boy dressed in black robes, a ragged cape hanging from his shoulders, and an old, wide-brim hat adorning his head. While appearing as alive as him, the boy's soulless stare sends a shiver down his spine. "Who are you?" the boy asks. "And why on Astria are you in a land you don't belong in?" "I should be the one asking you," he replies. "This isn't a place for a student to be." The boy just narrows his eyes in response. The two stare at each other silently as a gust of wind washes over them, making the hairs on his arm bristle. The boy's eyes are glassy and lifeless, regarding him as if he were nothing but a small animal in the way. "What's your name?" he is then asked. "Electro." "How very creative," the boy scoffs. Electro's right eye twitches as the urge to punch the boy grows in his gut, hot and twisting. He thought he was finally done with the name-mocking after graduation. "You're not supposed to be here, Electro," the boy continues. "Though, now that you are here, I'm afraid I can't let you leave." Electro lets out an amused huff, a grin spreading across his lips. Is this going to be a fight now? While he doesn't enjoy beating up students, he's not afraid to put this one in his place. What on Astria could you possibly do to stop me from doing what I want?" The boy stares on, the long, dark shadows of the trees stretching across the ground towards him. The darkness pools at his feet, and a blast of cold air batters Electro's face. The stinging chill of magic lingers on his cheeks as the atmosphere grows heavy on his body. His cocky confidence is replaced with dread magnified tenfold. The lightning that sparks from his body ceases instantly upon sensing the superior magical prowess standing before him. "I would suggest you start walking," the boy speaks, raising a hand to point in the direction of the distant castle. As he moves, the shadows underneath him warp and stretch, forming shadowy claws and needles along the ground. "I'd rather not have to drag you to the lady myself." Seeing no other option, Electro turns and starts walking towards the castle again, this time shadowed by his new companion. The boy's cold gaze causes the hairs on the Electro's neck to stand straight, tingling with static. "What have I gotten myself into?" Electro thinks in the quietness of the island. If he wasn't already regretting coming to Corridon before, he certainly is now. "Why are you on Corridon, Electro?" the boy asks again from behind. "That's none of your business," Electro replies. No sooner do the words leave his lips than something cold presses against his back, poking through his jacket and shirt to sting his skin. Eyes wide, he glances over his shoulder. A long black needle is jabbing at him, risen from the pool of shadow that continues to follow under the boy's shoes. The boy's stare bores into his own, his lips parted to reveal his gritted teeth. "Only a fool would come to Corridon without a mission." Electro clenches his jaw. He can't simply tell any old being what he's here for, let alone this kid, whoever he is. It's too important for any being to know about. Too powerful. If this boy wants an answer out of him, he better be ready to brawl for it. Good luck beating it out of me. Chapter 1. The doorbell chimes merrily as the cycle slowly comes to a close, painting Asandra in vibrant yellows and oranges. Jake, flicking a speck of ice cream off his freshly shined golden shoulder pads, turns to greet the latecomer with a wide smile. "Kimberly!" he booms, arms outstretched as if he were going to receive a hug from his girlfriend at that very moment, though the countertop that stands between the two wizards often gets in the way of such immediate loving embraces. The cryomancer looks up at him, her icy blue eyes dull as she holds her textbook down at her side. She tugs at the white shawl that hangs over her shoulders, the large blue snowflakes of ice magic adorning either side, as she readjusts the sapphire string that holds it in place. "Hi, Jake." She lets herself behind the counter, and Jake wraps his arms around her. She raises her free hand to half reciprocate his gesture with a tired pat on his back. "You look exhausted," Jake comments as he steps away. Kimberly gives him a weak smile in return. "Our teacher has been pushing us hard lately. I've not had to make so much ice before in my life. Then go on upstairs and take a rest. Let us worry about cleanup." Kimberly nods. It better be spotless for next cycle." "Yes, boss," Jake salutes. Kimberly chuckles and makes her way into the back of the shop as Jake sets about closing up for the cycle. As he steps out from behind the counter to flip the store's open sign to closed, he hears, "Hi, Kimstar. You look exhausted." "Yeah, Jake's already told me that. You should help him clean up." "I know, I'm going to. Take it easy, Kim, okay?" "Don't worry, Amber. I know what I'm doing. Thank you for all of your hard work." "No problem." Jake turns back to the counter to see Amber emerge from the back of the store. She flicks a part of her bright pink hair over her shoulder and gives him an energetic wave. "I'm going to wash the empty containers." "Don't forget the ones under the counter," Jake reminds her. "I won't." "Can you throw me the broom?" "Sure." Amber picks up the broom leaning against the wall near the store's back doorway and tosses it over the glass display. Jake just narrowly misses the wooden stick and it clatters to the ground at his feet. Much has changed around the shop since the midterm projects. Amber is a full-time employee, bringing the place some much-needed positive energy. Though that doesn't mean running the shop has gotten any easier. With Blaze gone and Ethan all tied up with the council in the wake of Corridon's mysterious and sudden restoration, the shop is always low on hands for 3/4 of the cycle. The clatter of metal rings throughout the shop as Amber goes about rounding up the nearly empty ice cream tubs to be cleaned out. Even if the beings have changed, the duties haven't. Just as Jake begins to sweep the floor, a being raps on the door, rattling the tiny bell. With a small sigh, Jake turns to the door, prepared to shoo away whatever wizard it may be. Though to his surprise, it's Ethan standing on the other side, with a thin, apologetic grin across his lips, the wide brim of his hat casting his face in light shadow. Jake opens the door, but still blocks the spiritist's way inside. It's been almost half a season since Jake has seen him. Staring at him now, he never realized just how scruffy Ethan had looked before. The ragged piece of cloth that used to cling to his back is now a vibrant, flowing cape. The little frays of his hat are gone, smoothed over and rich with new color. Even the silver-stitched runes that run across the edges of his robe seem much more neat and orderly now. "Hey, Ethan. Long time no see," he greets his friend. "Yeah," Ethan forces a chuckle. "I was passing through, so I thought I'd drop by. How's the store?" "It's been a little busier, but the three of us have been making the most of it." Ethan nods, and the two fall into an awkward silence as Jake still holds the broom in hand, itching to get back to sweeping. "Did you just start cleaning?" the spiritist inquires. "Yes," Jake replies with a soft eye roll. "Need any help?" "No, we're fine. Thanks." "Come on, it'll go faster. I appreciate the offer," Jake sighs. "But you're not employed here anymore. Besides, letting beings in right now would be setting the wrong expectation." His gaze passes over Ethan's shoulder and at a small group of wizards who have gathered behind the spiritist, standing around nervously as they wait for a chance to slip inside and demand a cone. He's seen these types countless times before. He hates to turn his friend away now. If anything, if he had come later towards the end of cleaning time, Jake might have invited him in to hang out for a bit. But right now, he's got a job to perform, and he's not looking to break any of the store rules, or Kimberly's trust, just because it's Ethan at the door. There's cleaning to do and wizards to shoo. As if sensing the beings behind him, Ethan half turns to the small group and tells them sharply, "They're closed." The group stands rigid, staring at the spiritist with wide eyes. Then, slowly, they frown and grumble among themselves as they trudge away from the storefront, shooting the spiritist glares of disappointment. "If you come back later," Jake starts. Ethan shakes his head, cutting Jake off as he lets out a tired sigh. "I've got a lot going on later." "Still stuck in all that red ribbon, are you?" "Sadly." It's not terribly surprising to hear that. After the dead island Corridon was restored to its former liveliness and the travel ban was lifted, Ethan has been available less and less. He already dropped out of school and quit working for Kimberly to consult with the Council of ASTRIA and help the Feni on Corridon get back on their feet. He felt it only appropriate, being not just a fragment shadow. Jake can still hardly believe he's been friends with a god this entire time, but also taking responsibility for his past shortcomings. If Jake were in his position, he'd most likely do the exact same thing. On a more personal level, however, Kimberly is graduating soon, and both Jake and Amber will be moving on to their next terms. It's almost strange to think that his senior year is coming up, and then he'll have all the time on ASTRIA to spend with Kimberly after that. "Hey," Jake speaks again. "Don't push yourself too hard. We'd all like to see you more." Ethan flashes him a weak grin and replies, "I'll see if I can make some time to hang out. I should be going now." "Have a good night, Eth." Jake stands in the doorway and watches his friends stride away from the shop, his cape billowing behind him as if it were waving him goodbye. Finally, Jake turns back to the interior of the store and begins his end of cycle sweeping. The bristles of the broom brush along the ground rhythmically as he makes his way from one corner to the other, dragging around shards of ice cream cones and sprinkles as he does so. It's probably the most relaxing thing he gets to do all cycle when it comes to running the shop. "I'm done with the washing," Amber announces, emerging from the back room. "Did Sunbeam stop by earlier?" It was just Ethan." Jake glances up from his work to see disappointment flash in the Keeler's silver eyes. "Oh, how is he?" "The council still has him by the neck. He didn't stay very long." Still, Amber's shoulders slump. Jake can't really blame her for being so deflated. After their adventure to Corridon, Amber seemed to grow quite attached to the spiritist, but she hasn't seen him at all since they've returned. "So long as he's okay," she sighs at last. "He's resilient," Jake tries to reassure her. After all that Ethan's supposedly been through, from all the bits and pieces of his story that Amber has shared with Jake and Kimberly over time, he sort of has to be. Amber just shrugs. "I'm going to go if that's all right." "Yep, rest well." "Thanks. Enjoy your class trip." Jake only half smiles back at her, a tight ball of panic slamming into his chest. Oh no, that's next cycle, isn't it? He completely forgot to go tell Kimberly about it. He gives Amber a stiff wave goodbye as she leaves the store. As much as he trusts Kimberly to run the store by herself for at least part of the cycle, he worries what it will be like when she has to go to class, and Amber's all alone serving customers. Will Kimberly decide to close for the cycle? Can they eat the lost revenue? He lets out a frustrated sigh. It's not like he can skip the trip. It's for history, after all, which is taken extremely seriously at the Asandra School of Magic, or ASM for short. He looks down at the small pile of food bits and trash next to the bristles of his broom. All of a sudden, the thought of finishing his simple chore brings along with it the sharp sting of anxiety. "All done, boss," Jake announces as he strides triumphantly into the living room. Kimberly looks up from her textbook as she sits on the sofa and musters a thin grin. "Thanks, Jake. Is Amber gone?" "She left a little while ago," Jake nods. Kimberly shifts on the sofa, closing her book and setting it aside to give her boyfriend her undivided attention. It's been a long couple of cycles, for sure. Business is as booming as ever, and it doesn't help that she's still associated with the now-revered Ethan Nightshade, resident fragment shadow and expert spiritist. She doesn't mind the new customers, but the amount of work on top of preparing for graduation is really starting to take its toll on her. "I've been thinking about hiring some more help," Kimberly says as Jake takes a seat next to her. He wraps an arm around her shoulders and leans in close. "More help is always appreciated." "I just don't have the time to make flyers or anything," Kimberly continues. "Maybe if we can hold out until I graduate. That way, she'll not be dividing her attention between her schoolwork and running the store, and she'll be able to focus on other things, like hiring." Jake, in response, lets out a nervous chuckle. "Right, until you graduate. About that." Kimberly turns to him and furrows her brow. "Jake?" "Well," he lifts his arm off her shoulders and laces his fingers together. "It's not that important. I'm just not going to be around next cycle." "What's going on?" she presses. "My class is going on a trip." Oh, well, that certainly complicates things. I'm sorry, he continues. I meant to mention it, but it slipped my mind until now. Kimberly just sighs with disappointment. Jake. How is she going to run the shop now? It'll just be her for half the cycle, then she'll have Amber for the lunch rush, then she'll need to leave for class right after. She's not leaving Amber all alone at the shop, and with the number of wizards they've been serving lately, it's not like Kimberly can handle them all by herself anymore either. She hates to close the shop for a whole cycle, but it seems like it's her only option if she doesn't want to drive herself insane. Now she's going to let Amber know what's going on, or else she might begin to worry about Kimberly's safety and well-being. Are you going to close the shop? Jake asks sheepishly. Might as well, Kimberly replies. There's no point in working myself half to death all alone. Are you sure about this? Yes, Jake. It's okay if we close for one cycle. Jake's worried frown isn't fazed by her reassurance, his eyes haunted by the past. Haunted with leaving Kimberly alone, with the shop closing for any length of time, with panic and uselessness and pain. Before, when the store closed, it was all right. Maybe she needed to take some time off. Maybe she was short-staffed like she will be next cycle. But after the shadow incident, closing has taken on a whole new meaning. Jake, she hums, placing a hand on his nearest leg. It'll be okay. I'll be okay. I know, he replies quietly, a hint of disbelief in his voice. He knows and he can't push past it. She doesn't blame him. If it makes you feel any better, I can have Amber over until you're back. Jake presses his lips together, contemplating her suggestion. He stares intensely at the table in front of the sofa, almost as if he were trying to light it on fire with his eyes alone. Eventually, he nods. It's a slow, reluctant nod, but an agreement nonetheless. Kimberly musters a smile. I just don't want anything to happen to you, Jake says, turning his back to her. I know, she replies softly. There's more she wants to say to him. How that era is over, how that maniac is gone, how that the only other being who could cause such pain to happen again is their close friend who means them no harm. But she decides to keep her mouth shut. Nothing said by even her would affect his thoughts. So, what's for dinner? She asks instead, in an effort to take their minds off of the shadow incident for the time being. I thought you were cooking, Jake replies with a half-hearted chuckle. I could, but you will be getting meat. Her boyfriend lets out a sigh and stands. I'll cook then. In response, Kimberly kicks her legs up onto the sofa, taking up the rest of the sitting space. Thanks, Jake, she sings after him as he disappears into the dining room and, ultimately, the kitchen. She doesn't know why, but Jake's been much more fussy about eating meat since the shadow incident. She's had to buy almost double the fruit she used to get before just to keep his appetite satiated. She doesn't mind eating only fruit for dinner, even with the limited ways that they can be prepared. Afterwards, she sometimes cooks up some meat for herself to complement his meals. Eating a balanced meal is still important to her, though she'll always enjoy the sweet aroma that lingers in the air long after they dine, making her long for more. She turns back to her textbook to pass the time, flicking to the last chapter of the text. Methods to Push Limits and Grow Beyond is its title, and what she was working on in class that cycle. It is what it says, a variety of different strategies for how cryomancers can further their own magical power beyond the hall. While the chapter is in every textbook, the methods and advice for each branch is different for obvious reasons. Methods to push limits and grow beyond. As your time at the ASTRIA School of Magic comes to an end and you look towards your future career, the use of cryomancy in our lives may seem limiting at first. However, from water workers to simple ice makers, the role of a cryomancer is highly integral to the continuing survival of all the known islands of ASTRIA. The learning and growth of one's power does not end with graduation. Throughout this text, the concept of passive power has been lightly discussed. The concept of passive power stems from that of the General of Ice himself. Known not to favor his magic, the general was still able to accumulate a great wealth of magical prowess. It is not always the active use of a wizard's magic that allows it to grow in strength, but rather our active use is a form of control over our endlessly growing internal power. The extent of our passive power, how it accumulates and how it affects us physically and mentally, has not yet been explored in full. It is advised that the active use of magic is never fully ceased, and as it is the primary, if only, way you can keep your magic healthy alongside yourself. This continuous use will also help you to adjust to your passive magic as it accumulates over the course of your life. The sugary smell of sizzling fruit slices wafts into the living room. She inhales the scent with deep breaths, savoring the sweet sensation. She can hear Jake banging something against a metal pan as he cooks the freshly cut fruit slices. Slowly, she closes her textbook and lays on the sofa, waiting for the call to eat. Knock, knock, knock. With a heavy sigh, Blaze stands from his desk and hauls his tired body over to the door of his dorm, wondering who on ASTRIA would ever come knocking. It's probably a mistake, he automatically assumes. No being has come to explicitly see him in... Well, he would rather not think about that time too much. He throws the door open with his most dead-inside glare, only to be surprised by the sight of his ex-best friend. Ethan stands in the doorway awkwardly, clearly unprepared to be there, as his hands fiddle with the edges of his cape, with his hat tipped forward, letting its wide brim partially hide his eyes from view. For a long moment, neither being speaks. Blaze pulls a deeply confused expression. Why is Ethan suddenly at his door, this night of all nights? Didn't he make it clear that he doesn't want to see him again? He doesn't want to talk. He doesn't want to try and figure himself out. He doesn't want to be experimented on, especially not by him. Hey, Ethan finally says. What do you want? Blaze demands. The harsh question stuns Ethan for a spell. To see how you were doing. I'm doing just fine, thanks. Blaze moves to shut the door, but Ethan holds a hand out to stop him. The timidness has left his face, replaced by what he reads to be frustrated concern. Liar, he states. Blaze replies. What does the council's pet know about his former friend? It helps to be friends with one of the most well-connected beings in all of ASTRIA, Ethan retorts. I'm worried about you. Blaze rolls his eyes. Sure you are. It's easy to not believe him. Since dropping out of school, Ethan has just been missing. Not actually missing, but largely gone from the public. Eating with the powerful, walking and talking with the influential, sitting atop his new heroic pedestal. Blaze hates everything about it. Everything about him. I've heard a lot. Ethan starts. Blaze shakes his head furiously. Whatever you've heard, they're just rumors. Ethan's gaze instantly goes sharp, sending a chill down his spine. When was the last time you socialized? Ethan asked. What's it to you? Blaze snaps back. Blaze, don't patronize me, he growls. With a single swipe of his hand, he gets Ethan out of his way and finally slams the door shut in his face. Silence. It's a sound he has grown accustomed to. It's hard to tell sometimes if it's comforting or maddening, but he likes it all the same. It brings him away from the rest of the world and the beings in it, and allows him to just do what he wants. Silence doesn't judge. He returns to his desk, his textbook wide open and painted in black ink with annotations both helpful and unrelated. He wasn't annotating anything he was currently learning, but rather rereading old lessons he has already forgotten, wasting his time. In the candlelight, he sighs, looking into a small pot of dirt that sits on his right. With hardly a thought, a small green vine rises from the dark soil and waves at him. Secretly, part of him is thankful that Ethan showed up, even if it was only for a short time before he pushed him away again. Even though he has hardly been outside, unheard of for a wizard of his type, he has heard the whispers about himself too. He has become a shut-in, and he knows it. After his 8th-cycle absence during his midterm, he hasn't been able to handle the new air of Asandra. He's been a wizard with few friends for the longest time, originally with a reason. Now he has no excuse for his abrasiveness, yet he has failed time and again to shake it. His old reputation hangs over his head like a dark cloud. Instead of uneasy gazes, he's met with nothing but disgust from his peers. What's the point in putting the effort to change when you've already burned all of your bridges down? He runs a finger along the small vine, and similarly, a small cold spot forms on his side, moving at the same speed his finger moves. He is alone, yes, but it's better than being in the public eye. Chapter 2. Early in the cycle, Jake makes his way to his hall, as ready as he'll ever be for his class trip. He even remembered to bring his scabbard for his sword, so he doesn't seem weird for carrying around such a long weapon without a place to properly store it. Summoning it in the middle of the trip would be too much of a hassle, but he didn't just want to leave it at home either. He walks around the dorms, his hall coming into view, flames bursting from the roof in an endlessly mysterious dance. He also sees other third-term pyromancers already huddled together in small friend groups, injecting a soft drone into the air on top of the usual buzz of magic against one's skin. He stands towards the edge of the crowd and folds his arms uncomfortably, staring silently at his peers. He has no urge to mingle with them. Instead, he lets his thoughts drift to Kimberly. It's hard not to think of her. She was still sleeping when he left. He had been extra quiet not to disturb her. Is she awake now? What will she eat when she wakes? What else will she do this early in the cycle, waiting for first-term classes to end and for Amber to join her? His hands firmly grip his arms. The urge to abandon his required class trip just to check on her slowly builds in the back of his mind. Eventually, his teacher emerges from the hall and claps her hands to grab the student's attention. All conversation ceases in an instant. With a reluctant sigh, Jake approaches the rest of his class to listen in. "All right, class," she says with a warm smile. "I hope you're all excited to see the Great Pyramid of Solari." There's a small murmur of tired enthusiasm from the students. Jake, however, grins to himself. He's been looking forward to it ever since the trip was first announced. It's one of the oldest standing structures that was built long before the Great War, alongside the old royal castle in Corridon. "Now, before we go, I must set some ground rules. His teacher continues, unfazed by her unenthused students. The use of magic inside the pyramid is strictly prohibited. We don't want to ruin anything inside. A lot of the things on the walls are very important to the history of Astria and the Cerberus of Mirage. Stay with the group at all times while we're inside the pyramid. We still don't know what exactly is inside the pyramid, as we've not had access to it for a very long time, and there are still many rooms that have traps and other protections within them. I don't want any being getting hurt or accidentally bringing the pyramid down. She lets out an amused chuckle at the thought of the pyramid collapsing on top of them as unease settles over the students as a thick blanket of silent dread. As always, the punishment will fit the individual. I implore you all to be on your best behavior while we're there. We're guests in a work zone after all. His teacher beams, as she always does, and holds up a pale yellow stone in the air. Now, let's go see the pyramid. Follow me. She starts off towards the campus archway, a small crowd of red-dressed wizards in tow. Jake has met a Cerberus before, beings akin to wizards capable of changing their legs into long, scaled tails, which is an astronomically lucky thing to happen in this era. Not to mention that the Cerberus was royalty. What was his name again? Luke, right? He doesn't really know if he's right, but he feels close enough. It's been a while since Jake's seen him, but he seemed like a decent being when they met. He spoke really well, too, for a Cerberus. He didn't think that they still practiced that, being an isolated nation and all. The archway, a series of gray stones covered in white runes in the shape of a large arch, stands open, a large rip revealing a flat, sandy plateau leading up to a large sandstone building, probably the pyramid. Around the opening of the pyramid is a series of colorful tents, with a variety of beings rushing between them with papers, tools, jugs of water, and other various ancient knickknacks. With Jake being at the back of the group, it takes a while for him to feel the warm desert air blowing through the rip. But when it hits him, it fills him with the strange glow of comfort. His prior worries over Kimberly dull as he finally steps through the archway and plants his armored boots onto the packed sand on the other side. While the fragment of Solari City he and his class stand on is small enough for them to be completely surrounded by void on nearly every side, the pyramid stands at its center, tall and proud, its point to the sky as the large mirage sun rises from the black abyss. However, it still feels and smells like a desert, hot and arid. These sensations are really the only way to tell that there once was an entire city built in the middle of sandy dunes. What's left, however, is only a small collection of buildings and the Great Pyramid itself. All right, class, this way, his teacher calls, raising her hand like a flag for the class to follow. She leads her red cluster closer towards the pyramid's opening, where most of the tents are situated. The packed sand under his boots slightly shifts as he follows behind his class, a slight crunch reaching his ears. It's surreal how much void he can see from this little chunk of floating land. ASM is built next to the edge of Vissandra, so he sees the void nearly every cycle, but it's only a small sliver of the black expanse. Farther into the island, all sight of the void disappears, and it takes a while to reach to walk to another public edge point. Here, however, the island is ringed with a single thigh-high rope. It's so scarily easy to push a being over the edge here, never to be seen again. The group stops just outside the entrance to the pyramid and stands around murmuring among themselves as the teacher briefly disappears into a nearby tent colored a bright red with silver trim, larger than most others around it. Jake looks around the camp from where he stands as they all wait for the tour to begin. A Shask, half-dressed in a dusty beige outfit, steps from a different, smaller tent nearby. A long brush attached to the end of one of his arms, with a small handkerchief held by a metal hand screwed onto his other arm. He runs the handkerchief under his fuzzy chin as he makes his way from one side of the camp to the other, briefly casting a glance at the group of students with disinterested mechanical eyes. From a different tent on the other side, a wizard in bright blue robes sets out a large bucket and waves her hand over its opening. The sharp snap of ice meeting warm air crackles faintly as Jake watches the bucket filled to the brim with solid ice. With that, the cryomancer steps back into the tent she came from. "All right, class," his teacher's voice rings out once more, drawing his attention back to the front of the collection of students. She emerges from the large tent with two more beings. One is a Shask with his chest covered in a stiff-looking red coat, buttoned up to mostly hide the clacking gears beneath it. With his legs a mixture of metal framework, pistons, wires, and patches of dead gray fur left behind. The other being, shockingly, is Ethan Nightshade. As much as he's happy to see his friend again, he frowns. What's Ethan doing here? Solari is the last place Jake expected to see the Fragment Shadow. "I'm sure you all know Ethan Nightshade by now," his teacher continues, gesturing to Ethan, who just half smiles at the students and nods, his gaze somewhat removed from reality. "And this is Sir Dalton Taylor, the leader of the Solari expedition and Astria's greatest historian on Serpentine culture." The Shask salutes the students, the stiff metal fingers of his right hand raising to his brow. "Salutations, students! It is my utmost pleasure to be taking you all through this wondrous monument this cycle. Me and my team have been hard at work here for just over 2 years now, uncovering the secrets of one of the oldest remaining structures on ASTRIA. For those that don't already know, Solari used to be a large city connected to the rest of Mirage." Ethan picks up for Sir Taylor. "The cause of the collapse is still speculated upon, but needless to say, it's a miracle that the Great Pyramid is still standing in this era. And now with it finally open, we are able to access its records for the first time in many millennia." Now it's no wonder why he's here on Solari. He's a Fragment Shadow after all, older than any being present by a long shot, so spouting the history of Astria to a group of young students is right up his alley. "Shall we go inside?" Ethan asks Sir Taylor. The Shask nods in approval. "Yes, there is much to explore within the pyramid. As we walk through the pyramid's halls, please do not disturb any of the workers. They are trying to preserve the pyramid's many wonders and aren't available for answering questions." "If there are any questions, please feel free to ask either one of us," Ethan grins. "You may stop and look at the walls, but don't fall too far behind the group. The place is big and we don't want any being getting lost." With that, the group begins their trek into the Great Pyramid. The entryway is breathtaking. The paint on the pillars is rather vibrant for being sealed away and uncared for many millennia, depicting the Serpentine belief of the beginnings of Astria. At the top of each of the 8 entryway pillars is a large tree, with the painted canopies stretching up and over the ceiling, connecting them all together. From the tree falls dark purple fruits that slowly morph into the various races of Astria, many of which have either evolved far from their birth roots or that wizards haven't seen since the Great War ended. The tree roots fade into thin blue rivers, and the brown trunks become green grass. It's truly a masterwork of artistry. The small entryway opens up into a large hall leading farther into the distance, lit by small electric bulbs hanging on a long length of copper wire. A handful of electromancers huddle together in a small corner near the entryway, chattering among themselves as lightning sparks from their figures, the bolts landing on the large metal pads that they sit on to provide power to this temporary lighting system. The walls of the hallway are large and long, engraved with images of all shapes and sizes. Many are of crops and rivers. Some are of the sky, painted either void black or brilliant white wherever they appear. Cerberus, with their long tails ranging from blues and greens to reds and browns, make up the majority of beings depicted, which is understandable since they had curated the pyramid up until Solari's collapse. Along these walls stand or crouch various shasks and wizards holding tools like brushes and chisels. Some have pots of paint beside them, carefully tracing the images and revitalizing their faded colors. Others carve out shallow lines, redefining figures nearly lost to time altogether. Ethan raises his hands, gesturing to the walls on their left and right. To the Cerberus, the Great Pyramid was known as the Pyramid of Prophecy. At the peak of their magical powers, it was said that the sands of Mirage gave them visions of the future, which they etched into the sandstone walls for future generations to heed. Of course, they also treated this place like a library, storing all of their important records in the many chambers throughout the structure. Some of these chambers are heavily protected by ancient enchantments, Sir Taylor adds, folding his hands behind his back. We have been able to gain access to some of the earlier chambers thus far. We are working on others as we speak. However, I must advise you students to keep to this hall here, lest some being gets hurt. They keep walking down the hallway, students letting out occasional gasps and pointing to images they find awe-inspiring. Jake stares as well, watching each scene pass him by slowly. There's one that appears to be a prediction about a food shortage, with woven baskets tipped sideways with orange grains of sand pouring from them, and Cerberus scooping them up as if they were drinking water. There's another with a large column of sand stretching from floor to ceiling with tiny beings running away from it. There's a smaller depiction of a feast, the table covered in mounds of what appears to be different kinds of fruit. At the head of this table is a Cerberus being crowned with a silver circlet. Lived by water way back when. Jake's ears picks up Ethan's voice. He's not speaking too loudly, probably just answering a question asked by some being in his class. Now, that's not saying that there weren't Cerberus with brown and red tails in Solari, but generally if a Cerberus was from the city, their tails would be more watercolored, and if they were from the desert, they would be more sandy-colored. A warm draft blows through the hallway, dry and stiff. The heat he doesn't mind, but breathing it in makes him suddenly feel like he's stuck in a dusty attic. Any other questions? He hears his friend ask. In an instant, he raises his hand to try and catch his attention. He doesn't see any other beings raise a hand, nor shout out a question, yet he still doubts Ethan sees him at the very back. But then the crowd parts and he strides his way up to him with a wide grin. Jake, he says, it didn't even occur to me that this was your class. Jake lowers his hand and smiles back. Didn't expect to see you here. The spiritist laughs in response, as the two walk side by side. I wasn't expecting to be here either. Well, not this cycle anyway. I was asked pretty late to come and give my historical insights. Why? Are you helping with the expedition? Ethan's smile strains. No, not really. It's not something I want to talk about. Not now. He nods to the group of students before them. But it's more for personal reasons. Nothing to do with the council. Stars, you're so busy. I know, it can't be helped. Did you have a question, or did you just want to say hello? Jake gives him a look, and Ethan can't help but shrug back. Sorry, I'm supposed to be working right now. Jake takes a wild look around him, then points to the feast. What's that about? Ethan takes one look at the scene and lets out a small snort. I shouldn't interpret serpent carvings, though if I were to hazard a guess, it's a crowning ceremony. Do they often eat so much fruit? Yes, Ethan nods. Even now, the Cerberus that still survive on Mirage exclusively consume fruit for their diet. Do they have any cattle? The spiritist shakes his head. It's too hot throughout the cycle, too cold during the night, and they have limited space and resources to grow the variety of plants needed to keep both the cattle and Cerberus properly fed. It's why they evolved to survive only on fruit. Jake nods along, licking his dry lips. Interesting. He opens his mouth to ask another pointless question, just to keep Ethan talking a little longer to retain some familiar company, but is interrupted by a deep rumble and a booming, echoey laugh. A laugh full of unhinged malice. As one, the group of students, Jake's teacher, Sir Taylor, and Ethan all stop walking, frozen by the ruckus. If anything, the edges of the hallway grow slightly darker as a large burst of magic fills the air, making Jake's skin crawl uncomfortably with its buzz. I'm free! The voice that laughed cries out in triumph. The sound of popping glass follows not long after, casting a portion of the hallway ahead of the group into darkness. There's a dark figure fast approaching them, blowing out the small light bulbs as it goes with bright bolts of lightning, leaving the broken bulbs sparking hopelessly in their wake. Small burn marks also appear on the floor, ceiling, and even walls, sadly, as the entity flies forward. The flash of crimson eyes catches Jake's attention, making him reach for his sword in an instant. It's a shadow. Whose shadow it is, he doesn't know, nor does he care to know. There shouldn't be any more shadows simply wandering around. Not since Corridon's restoration. Next to him, the temperature sharply drops, and, casting Ethan a quick glance, Jake sees cold white mist rolling from his hands and wrists. He looks at the pyromancer. Don't. Just get out of here. Jake grits his teeth, wanting to reply, to say he can help, but Ethan turns away from him and jumps into the air, yelling to the class, "Out of the pyramid now! Go!" The students do just that, turning tail and running back the way they had come, some of the workers joining them as they go. Jake, however, remains planted where he stands, watching Ethan with his sword in hand. There's no frantic screaming. There's no fear in the air. Just running feet and quiet murmuring, unsure as to whether or not they're truly in any sort of danger. With Ethan present, that might have given many a false sense of security. He's a fragment shadow, child of the spirit of shadow above. Of course, whatever danger there may be, he can solve it within moments. That's the theory. Speaking of every being's favorite fragment shadow, Ethan floats in the air, putting himself between the approaching shadow and the pyramid's exit. He extends his hands to his sides, releasing a burst of ice that spreads across the surface of the hallway, covering the carvings in an attempt to protect them. Jake. A firm hand lands on his shoulder. It's his teacher, her smile completely gone and replaced with a worried frown. Let the fragment deal with this. Sorry, miss, Jake replies, shaking her off. I've fought shadows before. The shadow lets out another maniacal laugh, drawing Jake's attention back to the situation at hand. The shadow electromancer wears a short-sleeved shirt, torn in some places as if it had been ripped in battle, with cloth strips wrapped around his arms. The same with its pants, half ripped to shreds and covered with more tied cloth strips. Its boots rise to just below its knees, decorated with all sorts of buckles and various states of functionality. Some of the straps are hanging on by a sliver of thread. Others are outright missing from their buckles. On top of it all, in usual Electromancer fashion, its spiky hair crackles with electricity. The shadow doesn't look that much older than himself. If Jake were to hazard a guess, it appears like a wizard only a handful of years freshly graduated. Still, the shadow appears to be nearly a head and a half taller than the average adult wizard, its clothes and skin cast in heavy shades of dark gray and void black, the only ounce of color to its brutish figure being the bright blood-red eyes and wild, white-toothed grin. "My, look who it is," the shadow says. "The lady's favorite shell." "I always wondered where you went," Ethan replies through gritted teeth. "Riona's dead, Electro." It's not shocking that Ethan knows this shadow already, nor the fact that they both used to work for the same insane spiritist. The spiritist who stole Ethan's magic, took Jake's and Kimberly's shadows, and ruled over Cordon with an iron fist for centuries. Now faced with the news that its leader is gone, Electro does something that catches Jake off guard. It smiles wider. "I know," it replies, its grin turning into a gleeful sneer. "I felt it, but I stopped caring about her years ago." Ethan raises a hand, pointing at Electro with confidence, and booms, "Return to your body, Shadow." Once again, a massive burst of magic fills the hallway, cold and oppressive, sending a rare shiver down Jake's back. And Electro explodes into its third crazed laughing fit as Ethan lowers hesitantly. A flurry of lightning leaps from Electro's figure and strikes the ice around it, leaving behind wisps of smoke and small indentations in the bright blue protective coating. "What made you think I'd still listen to you, huh?" Electro roars. Its false smile snaps into a scowl of pure, unbridled rage. "After all this time, having been abandoned for years, left to rot in the same darkness that created me. Get out of my way, puppet." Electro propels himself forward with a release of lightning behind it, its hands balled into fists as it rushes at Ethan. In response, a massive black mist rises from the spiritist, swirling to form a dark copy of himself, holding a long, needle-like sword in its hands, ready to strike back. Electro turns its forward momentum into sideways propulsion with a second burst of lightning from its side, narrowly missing the swing of the sword. It plants a single foot against the hallway's left wall, and with the third jolt of lightning it flies forward at an even greater speed than before. "Watch!" Jake starts, but he only manages to speak the one word before the blur that is Electro's shin comes into contact with Ethan's side. The spiritist is flung into the hallway's right wall, sending thin, spidering cracks across the ice layer from the impact. Ethan's shadow spins around, its red eyes shining with deadly focus as it raises its sword once more. With how close it is to Electro, there shouldn't be a way for the Electromancer to possibly dodge or counter the strike in time. Yet expertly and seemingly without a care, Electro pushes aside the oncoming sword with its left arm and throws a punch with its right, knocking its second opponent right out of the air as the sword flies free and plants itself tip first into the ground. Jake's heart sinks. In one fell swoop, this random Electromancer took down one of the most powerful beings currently alive on Astria. It doesn't even look hurt from deflecting such a sharp-looking blade. "And you," Electro speaks, turning to face Jake. It's smiling again, fists still clenched, eyes wide and wild. Jake holds his sword up in front of him reflexively and sucks in a nervous breath. "Are you gonna get in my way too?" Jake can feel his heartbeat pounding against his chest like a heavy hammer. He's nervous, yes. How could he not be? The last time he fought any sort of shadow, being shadow itself, he lost. Even with it being greatly magically weakened at the time, he has no hope in facing a fully powered, rage-filled shadow of an electromancer that can fly. The technique of using the power of lightning bolts to suspend a being in the air for any length of time is extremely complex. Only a few electromancers have ever learned and perfected the technique, let alone expanded on it to make themselves ostensibly fly. Electro is either extremely gifted or far older than it appears to be. Jake, meanwhile, is still a student, bound to the use of an aid for all eternity. And yet, he somehow finds it in himself to plant his feet firm and level his blade at the shadow above him. He's not going to let it leave this pyramid without a fight. Electro snickers. They were just my warm-up. The shadow bursts forward, its left arm drawn back in anticipation to strike. Flames curling around his blade, Jake slashes at the air, sending a long wave of fire at the incoming threat. Like it did with Shadow's sword, Electro quickly redirects its momentum to avoid the fire, once again positioning itself to spring off of the hallway's wall. Jake shifts his weight in anticipation. All he sees is a streak of black hurtling towards him as he springs to his left, sword outstretched in his wake to try and strike Electro, believing that it's moving too fast to avoid his extended blade. To his surprise, Electro grabs the fiery blade without an ounce of hesitation and uses it as a pivot to swing its body around to face Jake once more, yanking on the blade as it does so. Electro swings itself under the blade, and as it comes back up on the other side, it brings its knees close to its chest and kicks at Jake's head with all its might. Unprepared to take such a blow, Jake stumbles over himself and falls to the ground hard, his head pounding. Before he can even attempt to sit up, Electro plants its heavy boot on his chest and looks down at him with eager eyes, clearly basking in its superior fighting prowess. Pathetic. It spits on Jake, which surprises him as he didn't think a shadow was capable of producing spit in the first place. Electro lifts itself into the air once more, lightning swirling around its figure, and with that it zooms off, laughing the entire way to the pyramid's only exit. Jake can only lay there in the darkness of the broken light bulbs and listening to the fading crackle of electricity, his vision swimming with his sword growing cold in his hand and his heart heavy with helplessness. Jake. He hears Ethan call his name. His friend slowly trudges into his view, his hat crooked on his head as a weird black substance runs from the bottom of the thin slit that is the scar across his left eye, elongating it to his cheek. His injured expression is painted with undertones of disappointment. You should have left. Jake just shakes his head, unable to reply. He knows he probably should have, and yet he didn't. He couldn't bring himself to run away. Not from a shadow. The spiritist lets out a sigh and bends down, firmly taking Jake's arm. Stand up. With Ethan's help, Jake manages to sit up, letting the blood in his head even out before standing. As Jake tries to steady himself, Ethan turns to look over his shoulder at his dark double. He says nothing as he watches it stagger to its feet, those faces stiff as if he were chastising it. Jake, too, can't help but drink in its presence as well. He's only ever seen Shadow twice before. The first time it was a black knight without an ounce of free will to act upon. The second time it was a much friendlier interaction as it was formerly introduced to Jake, Kimberly, and Blaze. Even so, he's not quite sure what to even make of it. Jake has a shadow of his own, too, but he couldn't be conscious without it. Ethan, on the other hand, can exist separately from his. It could just be a fragment shadow thing. That's the only thing he can think of to explain this weird situation he is bearing witness to. Shadow's face is deformed and misty, mostly around its nose. Seeing a near exact copy of Ethan, hat and cape aside, standing not too far from him and his friend is certainly eerie. Its crimson eyes land on Jake, something regretful glimmering in its gaze, alongside a bit of shock from the sudden strike it sustained from Electro. Ethan finally wraps Jake's right arm around his shoulders to support him as he sways on his feet. "We should get you to a healer." "Yeah." Jake breathes in agreement. He closes his eyes, which helps his pounding head a little bit. A healer will make him feel much better. "My," Sir Taylor grumbles. "What a mess." Indeed. Ethan folds his arms as he stares at the rubble before him. The chamber is rather sizable. One smaller room attached to the main space, with the serpent carvings desecrated with all sorts of crazed runes. Detainment, prison, and anti-magic galore, along with others similar to them. Across the ground, rubble is strewn about. Smooth beige sandstone for half of it, and black char for the other. Worse, the chamber practically reeks of the suffocating smell of burned sandstone, and the walls are so electrified that anything any being touches zaps them. "A stone tablet used to be there," Sir Taylor says, pointing to the rather sizable rectangular patch on the ground in front of the smaller room. While the rest of the floor is gray and orange from the trekked-in sand, that one rectangular spot remains a somewhat pristine beige. "Rather large, floor to ceiling, wall to wall, unlike anything we had seen so far. We were wondering for the longest time what would drive any being to create this chaos." "Now we know," Ethan hummed sadly. To think that Electro's shadow had been here this entire time, right under his nose, and only last cycle did he hear anything about this place. The price he pays for being as busy as he was. "Respectfully, Fragment," Sir Taylor says, turning to look at the husk. "I thought it was said that all the shadows were gone." Ethan just nods back, his mouth pressed tightly closed. He had thought so too, and only after he had made that statement he was proven wrong. He thought he could correct it before the accidental lie grew into a problem, but he was simply too slow. "Nothing happened here when it was still detained?" he asks instead. "Nope. Nothing I or the crew knew of." "Any idea as to how this chamber in particular would be used for such a thing? Who did it?" Sir Taylor shakes his head. "As far as we're aware, we're the first beings to have stepped into the pyramid after it opened." "And how did it open, then?" "We're still trying to figure it out ourselves." The Shask huffs. He bites his tongue and retreats into his own thoughts. Sir Taylor is wrong in saying that the Kendon archaeologists have been the first to set foot inside the pyramid after its opening. Electra's shadow wouldn't have put itself in this sort of makeshift prison for all this time, and to come out of it that vengeful. It's impossible. Other beings were here long before the entrance was found open. But who? "They're here." Shadow's dull voice rings in his ears. Please excuse me, Sir Taylor," Ethan speaks. "I have other business to tend to." "Of course! Leave the tidying up to us." With a single nod of his head, Ethan turns away from the Shask and steps into the nearest shadow, willing himself to the infirmary back on Asandra. If Kimberly has arrived, then he should inform Asna. "Repeat his third term," a female voice cuts through the darkness, making Ethan pause. Asna's office melts into view before him as he hides himself in the corner, staring at the scene silently. Asna stands in front of his desk, conversing with the fire teacher from ASM. The Fenny's gray ears droop as he wears a troubled scowl, one hand to his chest. Beneath it, Ethan can make out a flash of regal blue and the sparkle of white iron between the folds of his white robe. It's clear he has a natural affinity for the fire branch, and he's a good student, the teacher continues with a disappointed huff. But, well, he's just not a pyromancer. What is it that he's lacking? Asna inquires. He's not lacking anything. Rather, he's been having a hard time, expressing himself with his magic. Ethan turns away from the office, willing himself to Shadow's side instead, feeling incredibly awkward. Asna's clearly busy right now. Besides, Ethan doesn't want to be eavesdropping on a private conversation like that. He steps from the dark corner of the medical room, where Jake rests, giving Shadow a pat on its shoulder as it watches over his friends. Kimberly sits by her boyfriend's side as he lies in a plain medical bed. Amber lingers nearby as well, twirling a strand of her long pink hair between her fingers idly. When Ethan appears, her bright silver eyes instantly snap to him, a smile spreading across her face. She must have been with Kimberly when the healer showed up to bring Jake's girlfriend to his bedside. Whatever the case may be as to why she's here, Ethan is still grateful for her presence. "Hey," she says with a small grin. Ethan tries to give her a somewhat comforting smile. "Been a while, hasn't it?" Amber just nods back at him, her eyes drinking in his presence as if he were to disappear forever the instant she looks away. Ethan shifts his weight. He has never been a fan of uneasy silence, especially when he's at a loss for words. He is disappointed that nearly all of them have been reunited like this. Blaze is the only one who isn't here, obviously. Ethan thought about sending for him, but decided against it. This situation doesn't involve him as much as it doesn't involve Amber, yet she just happened to be in the right place at the right time, and he wasn't. A part of him feels like Blaze wouldn't have even come if Ethan had sent for him anyway. The door to the room opens, and in strides Asna, the head healer of the infirmary and long-standing member of the Council of Asandra. The air around his figure shimmers and sparkles, leaving in his wake an atmosphere of calm and ease. The old Fenny's ears now stand stiffly perked, making it clear that he's here to conduct some serious business. Upon seeing Amber, the Fenny lets out a small sigh. "You just can't stay away from this sort of stuff, can you, Amber?" Amber smiles awkwardly back at her old boss. "I survived last time, didn't I?" "You did." Asna nods, approaching Jake's bedside. The pyromancer's eyes open ever so slightly, his eyelids fluttering. Asna places a hand on Jake's forehead, and a small glow of green light flashes from under his fingertips. "He's doing just fine," he announces. "He should be able to leave before nightfall." The old healer shakes his head. "I asked for his teacher to stay as punishment just this once." "I told him to leave," Ethan says. "Do you mind sharing what happened, then?" Ethan's hands reach for his cape as all the eyes in the room turn to him. A swirl of anxiety rises in his chest, coming more from Shadow than himself, and yet he shares in its concern. It's something he's never talked about to any being. Not even Asna knows the full story. But that was almost 18 years ago by now. He takes a deep breath. "Inside the Great Pyramid of Solari, there was a shadow." Kimberly sucks in a breath, and Amber's eyes widen. He can probably guess what they're thinking right now. A shadow? They should all be gone. From the dark corner of the room, Shadow floats out into the light, its hands clasped in front of it nervously as it looks down at the floor, avoiding eye contact with any of the wizards. Riona liked to experiment with ways to control shadows, Shadow says. Once she came up with the idea about changing a shadow's form, but none of us knew what that outcome would have been. Ethan managed to convince her not to experiment with any of the Fenny shadows in case the process killed them. A sickening unease grows within Ethan as it reflects. The first twisted shadow was a storm wizard called Electro, he continues. He went to Coridon. A wave of anxiousness washes over him, making him pause and look to Shadow. Its body is tense as it continues to linger in the darkness, shaking its head furiously. They don't need to know. Its voice whispers in the back of Ethan's mind. I didn't want them to get involved again either, but friends support each other. Ethan replies gently, attempting to reassure it. Still, doubt swirls between their connection, and Shadow visibly scowls. I don't know, Eth. Shadow, please. They've helped us already. They can help us again. Shadow remains tense, but reluctantly gives him an approving nod. He went to Coridon because he had been asked to. Ethan speaks again, turning back to the wizards. I was forced to bring him to the castle, and he became her test subject. He has to take a breath and right himself. After it was over, I brought his body here to the infirmary, and his shadow disappeared soon after that. When Coridon was restored, I thought his shadow would have returned too, but... Well, imagine my shock when I found out it didn't. I've not been as involved with the council as much as I may have let on, and I'm sorry. Most of my time was spent looking for his shadow so I could put the last of Riona's insanity to rest. But it didn't go well. I couldn't stop it, and Jake got hurt as a result. We couldn't stop it. Shadow corrects lightly. Ethan just presses his lips together and nods reluctantly. He doesn't want to acknowledge how fast Electro's shadow knocked both of them out. Ethan is one thing. As a husk, he is not as strong as a shadow. Shadow, however, is a different story. Kimberly frowns in confusion and asks, why was he asked to go to Coridon? I thought the travel ban was put in place nearly half a century ago or so. We don't know. Shadow attempts to lie. Riona didn't ask? Amber interrupts. Ethan doesn't reply immediately, but he can't stop himself from appearing greatly perturbed. He doesn't want to think about that moment, and yet it springs to mind so easily, so sharply, as if it just happened. How Electro's shadow rose up, surrounded in a strange new air that made even Ethan scared, even as screams of pain still echoed throughout the castle's derelict walls. Riona asked, all right. Two hands clamped down on Ethan's shoulders, warm and firm, yet comforting all the same, bringing the husk back to reality. He sucks in a sharp breath and looks up at Asna, towering over him. Sympathy paints the Fenny's face as he says, no more secrets, Ethan. No being can help you if you don't say what's going on. But his hesitation is coming from Shadow this time. We shouldn't, it says. It's not new to them, Ethan replies. Other beings have looked in the past. No. Shadow answers firmly. He understands why it's so insistent. To be friends with beings is one thing, but to place trust in these friends is another. It trusted Riona, and look at what happened. She was the last being it grew close to. But Ethan has had more time to himself to think. It's not necessarily the trust that leads to mishaps, but the beings they befriend in the first place. Ethan clears his throat. This is something even Asna doesn't know all the details of. As much as he doesn't want them all to be put back into danger related to his past, they've already done so much to help him try and escape it. He needs their help again, no matter what Shadow might think. He was looking for the font of magic, he reveals. Amber's brow furrows. Kimberly, however, gasps as Asna's eyebrows shoot up in an instant. Really? Kimberly mutters under her breath. What is that? Amber asks, clearly not feeling the gravity of the situation at hand. Ethan can't help but let his face fall momentarily into concern. Her memories still haven't returned yet? Or did she simply never hear the stories? Your parents never told you the... Kimberly trails off, the surprise in her eyes turning to a hollow sympathy instead. I'm sorry, Amber shakes her head and musters a weak smile. It's okay. I just need a refresher. A surprising number of the stories about the font of magic that have survived are, for the most part, extremely accurate, Ethan says. It's the heart of Astria, a localization of much of the power the spirits of light and shadow used to create not only our world but the whole universe. It's also the origin point of all of our magic. It once resided far below our islands, beyond a mass of water and a thick layer of bedrock, but it was moved in the wake of the Great War. I don't know who moved it or why, but what I do know is that our father eventually split it into 3 shards and hid it away among our civilization. It has always existed, but many have searched for the shards before and found no traces of them. That is, until recently. Electro was friends with the shard hunter. This hunter, and another friend of his, amazingly, actually found 2 of the 3 shards, almost 18 years ago now. Though even Electro didn't know exactly why he was sent to Corridon either. He had just been told to go and look, and that he would feel it eventually, if he ever found it. Riona thought that she could use the font to further her power. Shadow timidly adds, so she sent his shadow away when she was done with her experiments on it to collect the other 2 shards. That was the last we saw of it, until this cycle. The room is silent as the information sinks in. To Kimberly and Asna, the reveal of the font's true existence must be a shock. For all they knew, it was always a myth told to young children as bedtime stories. Do you know where his shadow is now? Asna finally asks. Both Shadow and Ethan shake their heads sadly. What about his friends? Did he reveal anything about them? Did he? Did he? I don't remember. Me neither. It's almost maddening how selective their combined memories are. How vivid some moments feel and how hazy others have become. Ethan spends quite a lot of time with Electro before his shadow is taken from him. down in the dark and decaying dungeons of the castle, but everything he can recall is nothing but worthless bits of idle chit-chat. Even if he did, it's been almost 20 years. They've had plenty of time to change their names and relocate. But they don't have many places to hide. If only we had a name to start with. It's not like we can ask him. His body's been in the infirmary since... An idea strikes Ethan. A crazy idea. One that might not even work. But an idea nonetheless. No, he says aloud, but I might be able to find out. Asna, I need to see his body. The healer scowls. What good would that do you? But Shadow already knows what he wants to do, and its eyes widen in panic. Eth, I don't think I... You're both going to have to trust me on this, Ethan interrupts. Please. Chapter 3. Shadow cowers behind Amber, its cold hands on her shoulders as she descends the stairs that lead into the infirmary's basement. Asna leads the way, with Ethan only 2 steps behind the old Fenny. Kimberly stayed behind to keep an eye on Jake. Amber's only here with them because Shadow won't let her go. Amber pats one of Shadow's hands awkwardly, trying to give it some reassurance. Hey, it's going to be okay. Shadow tightens its grip on her in response, whispering, But I don't want to. It's not going to be forever, right? We don't even know what will happen. Ethan is one thing, Shadow says. We're one and the same, but to inhabit another being's husk, that's so wrong. It blasts a strong wave of cold that makes Amber shudder. Yes, Ethan's crazy plan is to have Shadow enter Electro's body. In theory, it should be able to do that as if Electro's body were Ethan's. But no being knows if it will awaken Electro's consciousness, or if it will simply be Shadow controlling his body like a puppet. I don't know what would cause the spirit to be attached to the husk over the Shadow, but if Electro is like Blaze, his personality should awaken, Ethan had explained earlier. Well, there's only one way to find out. The basement of the infirmary is where the electromancers work, providing the building with the power it needs to function. They walk down a long hallway, rooms with ice glass walls on either side. All the surfaces of the rooms, minus the wall of the viewing glass, are covered with large metal plates that storm wizards' lightning bolts spark against, converting their magical energy into usable electricity. Naturally, from a healer's perspective, it seems like such a boring job to be stuck with, sitting in the semi-darkness all cycle, save for the lights from the hallway, pouring all of one's energy into powering the building above one's head. But at the same time, if they did not perform such a boring and dreary task on the regular, then their technology would never have been allowed to progress as much as it has. And yet, Amber sees storm wizards huddled together, playing board games amidst the lightning around them, or simply chatting away as they suck water from their ice glass-capped cups through small tubes, somehow finding some enjoyment in their mundane job. It's nice to see that it's not always so miserable for them. At the end of the long hallway is a single solid metal door. It has no viewing port on it, and is sealed away by 3 large metal bolts. Asna slides these bolts out of their locks and opens the seemingly heavy door with little effort, leaving the 2 wizards and one very nervous Shadow inside. They enter a rather small viewing dome along the edge of a large circular chamber made of ice glass, much thicker than that of the walls of the rooms they had passed on their way here, and another bolted door that leads to the chamber's interior. Suspended in the center of this chamber, static flaring all over his clothes, is a single wizard Amber can only assume is Electro. His eyes are closed, his brown hair matted and hanging heavy with oil, his clothes wrinkled. Occasionally, her eyes pick up on a brief flash of lightning, leap from his body, and strike against the curved metal wall around him. But otherwise, the only thing that crackles with electricity is the fabric that hangs from his thin frame. Keeping him nourished has only grown more dangerous as time has passed, Asna says, shutting the door behind him. His magic has grown wild. It's nigh impossible to get close to him now without coming close to being electrocuted, even with my magic. How is he floating? Amber asks in awe. She has heard the stories of wizards growing so powerful that they could use their magic to propel themselves through the air, getting as close to true flight as possible. But she doesn't see anything that may be keeping Electro suspended. I believe he must be releasing hundreds of bolts that we simply cannot comprehend, Asna replies. And with his magic expelling in every direction, he's producing enough energy to keep himself fixated in place like that. But doesn't he not have his shadow? A shadowless body still accumulates magic, Ethan replies with a thoughtful hum. But without a shadow, there's nothing in the body to store and regulate it, so the body will naturally reject it in its own way. I've been trying not to rely on him too much, Asna admits. The amount of electricity he's been generating alone the last couple of years is enough to keep most of the infirmary powered all cycle. Ethan nods lazily as he returns to Shadow, completely disregarding the Fenny. Ready? Must I? Shadow asks in a small whisper. We won't know if we don't try. Once again, Amber pats Shadow's hand encouragingly. It won't be for very long. But Eth... Don't worry about me, Shadow. I survived Riona just fine on my own. A flare of great unease fills the small enclosure, but Shadow finally floats forward, its expression hard to read beyond its nervousness. The three wizards watch it wordlessly as it passes through the ice glass like a ghost and approaches the unconscious electromancer. It circles the suspended body anxiously, clearly mustering the courage to carry out Ethan's plan. Finally, after what feels like an age, Shadow's form bursts into black smoke and wraps itself around the wizard's figure. Amber holds her breath, bracing herself for whatever is going to happen next. A blossom of warmth grows in Electro's chest, chasing away the icy chill that he had slowly grown accustomed to. He doesn't know how long it's been since he's felt anything, being left in the numbing dark with his thoughts as his only company. It could have been cycles. It could have been centuries. Like an old machine coming back to life, he flexes his fingers first, his stiff muscles and bones creaking. His heavy head fights his aching neck to stand up straight. As he does, his mouth hangs open. Breathe! A rush of sharp, cold air enters his mouth and stings the back of his throat as it flows into his chest. As his chest bulges, his ribs ache as his joints do, and his head tilts backwards. He forces his heavy eyelids open, breaking their crusty seals. Bleary-eyed, he watches his world pitch as an overwhelmingly heavy force pushes down on his figure, sending him to his hands and knees. Power comes rushing back into his jaw, and it trembles as he gasps for more air. His arms shudder, threatening to give out under his own body weight. His heart pounds throughout his body as the blood rushes to his head in an instant. What's going on? What's happening to me? His head throbs as the magic inside him swirls violently, only expanding with each breath he takes. His arms and legs feel increasingly bloated, bulging with bottled-up energy. It feels like he's going to explode at any moment. Calm down, a new voice stammers in his head. A voice he recognizes, but can't quite place his finger on where he remembers it from. No sooner does it finish speaking than his frantic breathing evens out to a more stable rhythm, and the expanding energy within him recedes, replaced by the calm, cold flow he's more accustomed to, as a new surge of strength fills him. His vision finally sharpens. He sees bony fingers beneath him attached to 2 weak arms. Was he always this thin? Where did his ring go? Slowly, he raises his head to look around. He's in a small room covered in metal. In front of him is a small section of ice glass, and behind it, 3 wizards. He doesn't recognize the pink-haired girl. Asna isn't an easily forgettable face, though he seems to have aged ever so slightly since last he saw him. But the boy... Rage fills his chest, and he balls his hands into fists. He takes a long and deep breath and roars, "You!" His throat aches as he screams, but he doesn't care. Something foreign lurches inside his chest, a cold ball of dense energy. It presses against the inside of his skin, agitated by his outburst, as the boy behind the ice glass takes a step back, fear plastered on his face. He better be scared. Slowly, he rises to his feet, swaying unsteadily. He hasn't stood in a long time by the feel of it, but he can still stand nonetheless. And if he can stand, he can teach that little jerk a lesson. Wait, no! The second voice rings in his ear, and the agitated ball of energy pushes against his chest harder. His right eye only twitches uncomfortably in response. He must be going crazy or in a dream. If he ignores it, it might go away. He takes a shaky step towards the ice glass. Oh, how he's thought of all the ways he's going to torture that jerk. His hands crackle with the buzz of electricity and anticipation. How about he takes him to the brink of electrocution first? Then he can see how long it will take for his head to explode. He takes his second step. He probably looks ridiculous, his whole body hunched over as he tries to waddle his way towards the wizards, his arms hanging limp beside him. But he doesn't care. He doesn't need to stand up straight to throw a decent punch. On his third step, the wizards finally seem to react. Asna throws a door open and enters the chamber, wrapping an arm around Electro to help support him. "Don't push yourself too hard," the old Fenny tells him as he slowly guides the Electromancer towards the exit. "You need to take it slow." "Do you know," Electro quirks, nodding to the jerk, "who he is?" "Of course I do," Asna replies flatly. "He's a friend." Electro opens his mouth to retort. When he tries to speak, his throat goes deathly cold. His eyes widen as he moves his jaw and sucks in breath after short breath, trying to speak and failing. He's in shock. A new voice rings from his mouth instead, sounding just like the new one in his head. Only now does he notice that it also sounds suspiciously like the voice of that jerk, too. The Fenny's eyes shift to look into his expression straight and serious. "You have been in a coma for 18 years, Electro. Much has changed since then. I'd advise you stay your hand until we can properly explain." Electro just stares back at the Fenny in utter disbelief, his unforgiving words ringing in his ears. 18 years? Oh no. Oh no. Electro is placed in a room by himself, giving him some space to breathe while Asna fetches him a meal. He slumps in his chair, feeling more tired than he's ever felt before in his life. Mentally, physically, emotionally. I'm sorry, the voice in his head says as shame swirls in his gut. What are you? Electro mumbles. Shadow. That's my name, and what I am. We met before. When? The castle. I was the knight. Electro presses his lips together. He remembers that night, its tall and imposing figure looming over him as he stood frozen before it, helpless, staring into its cold red eyes as the darkness closed in around him. And that jerk, Shadow continues. His name is Ethan. Electro just lets out an uncaring grunt in response. He doesn't care for his name. He might care for his name after he gives him a good thrashing, though. I know this is all a lot to take in right now. I'm surprised that you still have your consciousness. I still don't even know what's going on, Electro grumbles. I'll explain when Asna comes back, Shadow promises gently. Staring up at the ceiling, weak and frail, he mulls over what his life has come to. He never should have agreed to go to Corridon. He was starting to build a life, a proper one. He was healthy and strong. Things were looking bright. Then he let him get into his head. Now he's lost 18 years and has some strange entity living inside his head. Ryan, he growls aloud. When he finds him, he'll... The door opens, and Electro shifts in his chair. Asna enters holding a small, steaming bowl of soup. It's fresh, the healer warns, holding the bowl out to the Electromancer. Electro takes the bowl and cradles it in his hands, cherishing its warmth. The heat enters his fingers, making them tingle, but the cold void that now sits inside him consumes whatever warmth that manages to travel down past his wrists. You know, Asna continues, I was surprised when Ethan brought you here. That jerk. Yes, him. He felt bad. Shadow chimes in weakly, though Electro gets the feeling that his anger has made it feel intimidated. And it didn't want your body to sit abandoned in the castle. You're lucky, Asna continues. In the time you've been in your coma, Corridon was restored. But the Fenny are struggling to get back on their feet. Many haven't been nourished like you were. If it weren't for Ethan, spirits only know how much worse he would be doing right now. Electro takes the middle spoon, also warm from the soup, and stirs the dull yellow broth. He was also the one who put me in my coma. It's mostly hyperbole, but still somewhat true. If it weren't for that jerk, he wouldn't have been put before that knight and that spiritist. Asna nods. I know. Electro scowls at the healer's lack of care for what he's trying to tell him, that jerk is dangerous and shouldn't be trusted. You won't be back to brawling strength anytime soon, Asna tells him. However, if you eat well and do some light workouts, you should build back the muscle you've lost in a year or so. Until then, try not to get into any fights. No promises, Electra replies with a small, amused huff, finally shoving a bite of hot soup into his mouth. He sloshes the warm liquid around in his mouth, absorbing its heat as much as he can before swallowing. The healer stands before him silently a little while longer before turning to leave. "Can I get a stick of arcane?" he asks as the Fenny reaches the door. Asna lets out a disappointed sigh. "You've already gone through withdrawal. I've still got the craving. Arcane gold isn't allowed in the infirmary. You can buy a pack yourself when you leave." With that, he is gone, leaving Electro alone with his soup and Shadow. Oh well, it was worth a try. "You promised to explain," he says. Shadow stiffens, making Electro briefly feel breathless as his chest tightens. "Me and Ethan are Fragment Shadow, forced to serve Riona, that spiritist you saw. But we were freed not long ago, along with the rest of Corridon. We were trying to reunite you with your shadow, but it didn't go well. Now it's somewhere on Astria, hunting for the shards. Your friends are in danger." Electro huffs. "They can fall into the void for all I care. Ryan, anyway. Kelsey..." Just thinking about Kelsey makes his rage subside. He wonders how she's doing. He wonders what she's doing. I don't have many thoughts about Kelsey yet. Is that their names? Yeah. Ryan Ashblade and Kelsey Skyshield. Ryan got me into this mess in the first place. What about Kelsey? Well, He sighs into his soup. 18 years. Maybe she gave up. We had a fling, but otherwise, we were all just school friends. They each have a shard? As far as I know, but I could be 18 years out of date. He takes another bite of soup. He wants to find Ryan and beat him up for what he did. He wants to get his hands on that jerk and beat him up too. But most of all, he just wants some arcane gold to chew on. Is all of that too much for him to ask for? I can ask Ethan to get you some, Shadow offers, referring to the arcane gold. A small yet sharp shiver worms its way down his back. Did it just read his mind? Cold fingers unwrapped themselves from around his head almost instantly, relieving him of a great and oppressive pressure he didn't even realize was there. With it, his muddled thoughts slowly begin to clear. He can do what he likes, but it won't change my mind, Electro grumbles back. But I would appreciate it. What is it, by the way? Shadow asks. Arcane. You don't know what that is? His neck goes numb as his head briefly shakes side to side. I know Ethan doesn't like it. And you two have been on Astria for how long? A flare of anger erupts in his gut. Just because we've been on Astria doesn't mean we know everything you wizards have and do. Especially Shadow. A new voice fills the quiet room, making Electro jump in surprise. In one of the room's dark corners, the shadows shift and warp to form the figure of that jerk, who stares at him with a hard scowl as he holds a long blue box in one of his hands. He approaches Electro and holds the box out to him. Well, he's not happy to see this jerk. He accepts the box wordlessly. It's been in isolation from the rest of Astria for a large part of its time here. And I'm just like you are right now, a husk. I'm far from being omnipotent. Electro pops the top of the box open and takes out a stick of arcane gold, a thin golden rod that shimmers in the light of the room. He pops one end of the stick into his mouth and lets out a relieved sigh as his teeth clamp down on the stick's familiar chill. Almost instantly, a sugary taste fills his mouth as he sucks on the gold. Its taste is sweet and potent. Even though he still vaguely remembers the taste, it's clear he hasn't experienced it in a long time. A husk, he hums. A body without its shadow. Or, in your case, a body with a shadow that isn't yours. Now, God, don't let Asna know I brought you that. Electro just rolls his eyes. If he did say anything, he'd get his new box taken away, and he doesn't want that to happen. Just this once. I've got a friend willing to give you a place to stay for the time being as well. Housing around here has only worsened, and even though Korodon has been restored, it'll take some time for the hostels to open up again. Thanks. It's already getting late, so there's not much we can do right now. But next cycle, we can start looking for your friends. Kelsey? Kimberly hums to herself. Ethan just nods back at her. Sky Shield? Yes. That's my mother, she says. Really? Ethan asks. Well, that's what my father always told me, she corrects. Her mother left when Kimberly was only 1, but Kimberly has been told many stories about her growing up. Kimberly's amazed that Electro knows her mother, despite his name never being mentioned once. Maybe he knows where she went, where she is, or has an idea. To the side, she sees Amber emerge from the kitchen with a cup of water. Did he say anything else? No, Ethan sighs disappointedly. Aside from the other friend being called Ryan Ashblade, that's about all we have to work with for now. There will be time to properly question him next cycle. He's tired and still getting used to Shadow. You don't mind him biting arcane gold, do you? Kimberly laces her fingers together. No, not really. Arcane is mostly harmless. To this, Ethan quietly rolls his eyes. I know it's addictive. If he doesn't try and get me or Jake on it, then it's fine. Where do you want the mattress? Just along the wall behind you. The husk snaps his fingers, and a long mattress appears in a puff of black smoke, along with a single pillow and a sheet. Isn't that... Amber starts, pointing at the mattress. The one you slept on too, yes. Now, Kim will pick up Jake and Electro later this cycle, and next cycle Kim can go to her dad and talk to her dad about Kelsey, while I can try and get more information out of Electro regarding Ryan and where the 2 shards were originally found. Electro's shadow probably knows as much as we do, so we have to get to them first to warn them. Will he need my help again? Amber asks, approaching Ethan's side. The two stare at each other for a spell, Amber's face full of silent longing, and Ethan's only that of reluctant concern. Probably, Ethan finally says. But don't let all of this get in the way of your schooling. Right, she mutters, taking a sip of her water. She shifts her weight anxiously, her eyes searching the room for somewhere else to look besides him. I should go update Asna and see if he might have any information we can use, Ethan then announces. Have a good night, you two. The 2 girls watch him melt into a nearby shadow, leaving a strong buzz of magic in his wake. Amber sets the cup down on the table between her and Kimberly, her hair covering her face. Thanks for the drink. Amber, I know you just want to be helpful, but you're just a... Save it, Kim. Amber sighs. She runs a hand through her hair, revealing a troubled scowl. I just don't want... School is great and all, but I... In frustration, she grits her teeth and shakes her head. On one hand, I'm happy to stay out of your way, but on the other, I don't want to just sit by and watch. I want to put myself to good use. Right now, the good use is studying, Kimberly tells her calmly. Is it? The healer exasperates, holding her arms out wide. Right now, it doesn't feel like it. I don't even remember why I'm going to school in the first place. Well, it'll come back to you, Kimberly tries to reassure her, but her words only seem to send Amber into more of a frenzy. She presses her hands to the side of her head and falls to her knees, hyperventilating as she rocks back and forth on the floor of the living room. Watching her break down, Kimberly isn't sure if she should get up and comfort her or let her get over it herself. It's hard to tell sometimes which strategy will work, which makes standing by and waiting to see what will happen even more agonizing. Then again, she's not looking to make Amber cry. She's been through enough as it is. Does Ethan even know of her meltdowns? Even though he's not been around much until now, he still has Shadow to use as his eyes and ears. Maybe that's why he doesn't want her to get involved in this sort of adventure. Or maybe he doesn't know and is only thinking of her schooling. Slowly, Amber's breathing stabilizes, and she calms down bit by bit. Kimberly keeps back a thankful sigh as she watches on, waiting for her to come back to her senses properly before she says anything to her that could possibly send her spiraling again. Finally, Amber stands once more, her expression devoid of emotion. Sorry. It's all right, Kimberly only replies. I think I want to go now, she continues timidly. Tell Jake I'm sorry. It's okay. Thanks for being here as long as you were, and take care of yourself. Amber just nods, then walks out of the living room with light footsteps and a rigid posture. The only way Kimberly knows Amber made it to the front door is the chime of the store's bell, which rings as the healer leaves. As much as she hates to admit it sometimes, the Shadow incident has left a deep scar on Amber too. Kimberly is lucky she even remembers her parents in the first place. Amber feels small and alone as she walks down the straightway, her hands clasped in front of her, her fingers tightly interlocked, as she glides through the thin crowd with deft ease. They don't know what you're going through, the tiny voice in her head says. Just keep your head down and act normal. Act normal. She bites her bottom lip and picks up her pace, avoiding eye contact with any being she happens to pass. Her heart is tight with panic and confusion. She had to force herself to stand and leave in the middle of her panic attack. She didn't want Kimberly to suffer through another one. She just wants to get back to her dorm where she can be confused in peace. Just keep it together and act normal. Her brisk walk breaks into a trot the moment she reaches the end of the straightway, dashing up the street as fast as she can, while still trying to not appear in any sort of distress. Still, tears of frustration sting her eyes. What's the point in school anymore if she's forgotten why she wanted to go there in the first place? Her adventure to Coridon took away that meaning, but it gave her a new one. To help those in need, not just those injured or sickly, but suffering silently in other ways and other situations as well. She's been itching to leave behind her schooling and head off to do something new and exhilarating. Still, as she reflects on who she had been before, why can't she remember anything else? Why hasn't her childhood come back to her? What made her so quiet and timid? What's holding her back from breaking out of that and being herself? Who is she? Amber stops dead in her tracks as her knees buckle, dropping her to her hands and knees. Her head pounds, the void of absent knowledge overwhelming. There's something there, she knows it, deep down, but she can't see it. Something is keeping that history from her. A history that has shaped her. A history that she desperately wants to know, so that she can figure out where she came from and how to move on from that. To move on from that timid and shy wizard she once was. Why must this be so hard? Tears roll down her cheeks and drip off of her chin, and her ears roar with her rapid heartbeat. The cobblestone street is rough on her legs, making her knees ache as she rocks herself back and forth on the ground. She squeezes her eyes shut in an attempt to stop her tears, only for them to flow faster. You're in the middle of the street! Get it together! She opens her eyes again, wet and aching, to darkness. Heart in her throat, she raises her head and blinks. No, her eyes are open. Where did this darkness come from, then? Ethan? Then there's a shift, a slight tremor in the ground around her, and a small hole of light opens up above her. The one time I step outside my dorm, comes a tired sigh. Blaze leans into view, the glare of the light on his goggles hiding his eyes. Amber's mouth opens wordlessly, trying to find something to say in response. Blaze? What is he doing here? Why don't you clean yourself up first? Using her sleeve, Amber wipes her cheeks dry. When did you... She tries to ask, though her words get caught in her throat. I've been here for a while, he replies flatly. You're welcome. Now she can see it. The darkness was brought about by a dome of vines, shielding her from the outside world. Blaze looks around, then he disappears, and the vines that surround her retreat back into the ground, replacing any cobblestones they happened to displace when they emerged, leaving behind a ring of dark brown dirt in their wake. The naturist no longer stands by her. Instead, she spots him walking away from the street and towards the willow tree in the distance. She didn't even realize that she had made it to the lake just outside of the ASM grounds before collapsing. Quickly, she stands, though she still stares after Blaze with mild confusion. She can't help but appreciate his kind gesture, yet her mind notes that this is the first time he's been even remotely nice to her since she met his shadow. She finally turns away from him. She's almost back at her dorm. She should get there before anything else happens. Chapter 4. Kimberly gestures to the storefront. This is where we live. Electro tilts his head, staring at the storefront curiously. What sort of business is this? Ice cream, Kimberly replies with a proud grin. Jake nods next to her as he half leans on her shoulder for support. The cryomancer leads the way inside, the three passing through the neat store and into the back room where the stairs are. Electra finds it impressive for a fourth term to not only have such a successful business with a storefront on the straightway, but for her to also own so much equipment too. The large coolers, the cauldron-like mixing bowls, and the sink so deep it can fit an entire wizard in it. It all must have been quite the expensive investment. He raises a hand to twist the stick of arcane gold that hangs from his mouth, staring at the back room for a moment longer before following the students upstairs. Ethan brought a mattress for you, Kimberly tells him as he emerges from the stairwell and is met with a narrow hallway. Kimberly stands by an open doorway, gesturing to it expectantly. The living room he enters only contains a single sofa and a table, with the dining room in full view at the other end. Pushed up against a bare right wall is a single mattress. Thanks for letting me stay here, he says to her. Of course, she replies with a warm smile. After all, I'm the only one with a proper house of any kind. Even we still live in Ethan's dorm. Shadow mumbles, making his head buzz uncomfortably. Feel free to sit and relax. I'll start on dinner. Do you have any allergies? To what? Fruit, really, but anything. Electro once again twists the stick of arcane gold. Nothing I can think of. Then it should be ready soon. Kimberly disappears into the dining room, leaving Electro alone with Jake on the sofa and Shadow in his head. This is just wonderful, he mutters aloud to himself. What is? Jake asks. Electro turns to the lounging wizard, his feet propped up on one of the armrests and his head resting on the other. Just... He shakes his head and throws his arms out wide. This thing... He sits down on the mattress and presses his back up against the wall. Shadows and fonts and all this missing time. How much did you miss? 18 years? Stars. Jake shifts on the sofa, turning on his side to face Electro. I'm turning 19 this year. Electro raises a hand to his hair, where a greasy brown strand hangs just in front of his eye. He pinches his tip and lets his mind's eye see how he wants it to look. A burst of color rushes from his fingertips, turning the brown to a much more familiar, rich amethyst color, while at the same time chasing away the rather dirty appearance. He still feels dirty, but at least no being will know upon first glance. Thank the stars for glamour. This is all Ryan's fault, he huffs at last. If I just shut that door. Ryan? Ryan Ashblade, pyromancer, massive jerk, always had his head in a history book. He had crazy ideas back then. The fonts of magic was one of them. Have you seen them? The shards? Of course I have. When Ryan found the first one, he practically paraded it around to us. What did it look like? The pyromancer asks out of curiosity. Electro lips his dry lips. What did they look like again? He remembers being in complete shock and awe, totally and utterly enraptured by their mystical majesty. But he can't quite recall what either of the shards actually looked like. Even with his hazy memory, those moments involving the shards are even blurrier, as if the shards themselves don't want him to recall their existences before his very eyes. White, shiny, glowy. Well, they looked like stars. Little stars you could hold in your hand. They were warm, too. Warm with magic. Why did Ryan want to find them so bad? Same reason as any other shard hunter. To reunite them. But Electro just shakes his head. In hindsight, it didn't really seem like Ryan wanted to reunite the shards. If he did, then he could have just done it all himself. But Electro's not Ryan. He doesn't truly know why Ryan got him and Kelsey involved with his insane schemes, sending the two of them on their own little adventures. But when Electro finds Ryan, he'll certainly not forget to ask, with his fists. I don't know, he emits aloud. I don't. Really. Sorry my shadow gave you a concussion. Jake smiles weakly back at him. It's not that bad. I just can't stand. Your fighting was impressive, though. A small bloom of pride fills his cold chest. Thanks. It's not every cycle a wizard decides to fight foot and fist. I like it. I'm stuck using an aid, Jake comments sadly. A Wanderstaff, Electra asks. Sword, Jake replies. Ah, Ryan used a sword too. The fire wizard perks up at the news, his eyes widening eagerly. He did? Yeah. Though it's not like he used it much. Electro sighs in disappointment. He just liked the look of it. He didn't treat it like the weapon it was. Oh. Jake deflates. Look, you want a wand? Get a stick. You want a weapon? Then you better learn how to swing it. He pauses to take a breath and notices Jake's dark expression staring back at him. What? At least you don't need an aid, he states. Electro frowns back in confusion. That's not the point. A wand isn't a weapon any more than a weapon is a wand. Swords cut. Staffs don't. So if you got a sword, treat it, use it like a sword. It's not that hard, Ryan. He runs his hands down his face. Oh, stars above. But Electro, you don't need an aid. What do you care? Why don't you just use your magic like every other being? Yeah, well, I know mixed martial arts. I don't need a stick or fancy hand gestures or whatever. The only weapons I need are these. He holds up his fists in front of him triumphantly, showing them off to his completely made-up opponent. Usually he'd flex, too, although with his current skeletal frame, it'd just make him feel stupid if he tried. Jake's pout turns to a slight frown as his eyes shift back to Electro. Mixed what? Mixed martial arts. What's that? He trails off, confused himself, even though he tries not to show it. Mixed martial arts. What is that, exactly? He knows the words. He should know what they mean. Punching and kicking. He shrugs, lost for a proper explanation himself. Do you at least understand what I'm trying to say? The young fire wizard just rolls his eyes and turns his gaze to the ceiling. I understand, Shadow chimes. I also use a sword. Gee, that's nice. Electro sighs. What? Jake asks. Nothing. Shadow. Oh. Though, I don't think wizards have used weapons since the Great War. Shadow continues. I just don't use my magic a lot. Why not? Go on and talk. I don't want to look crazy. Of course, in an instant, his lips go numb, and Shadow speaks its answer. I just don't. Ethan's the magic expert of us two. Well, I also didn't have my magic for a long time, so that might also be why. He waits for his lips to return to his control. When they don't, he frowns and has to slap his mouth to get Shadow's attention. Oh, sorry. Thank you, he sighs. You know, I had a similar conversation with Ryan way back when. It's not necessarily that if you use a weapon, you can't use magic and vice versa. It's more about finding that balance between the two that you're comfortable with. Recalling the old argument, he chuckles. He wasn't having any of it, though. Well, why don't you use a weapon? What kind of wizard are you? Anti-magic? He mocks. He tries to keep it playful, but rage builds in his stomach regardless. He forces a shrug to try and move past it. But I can also see how not having magic for an extended period of time also has some effect. How did that happen? Riona? She must have been far stronger than what he saw of her to steal any being's magic, let alone that of a fragment shadow. A sweet, sugary smell fills the air, and Kimberly calls, Dinner's almost ready. Electro, can you come help me for a spell? Yep. Electro stands from the mattress and wanders into the dining room, instantly noticing the opening leading into the kitchen, where Kimberly stands at the stove. On the counter next to her is a set of plates, forks, and cups, enough for the three of them to eat off of. Kimberly briefly gestures to the dining ware with one hand. Could you set the table? Any seats are fine, but Jake usually sits across from me. Got it. He takes the items and sets them out on the table, 2 across from each other and 1 at the head of the table. It'd feel a little weird for him to sit right next to only one of his hosts, in his opinion. Can you get to the table, Jake? Kimberly asks. Yeah, just let me know when you're serving, he replies tiredly. Well, it's practically done now. Jake shifts on the sofa and stands, swaying on his feet. Slowly, he staggers over to the table, gripping one of the chairs as soon as it's within his reach for support. As he sits, Kimberly emerges from the kitchen with a steaming plate of fried fruits. No meat? Electra asks upon laying eyes on the meal. Would you like some? Kimberly replies. I can make you some if you want. No, it's fine, just... I know, she nods. Jake consumes fruit almost exclusively during these cycles, so I pay a little extra so we can both eat properly. And cooking 2 meals a night just seems... exhausting. I see. With that, he sits at the table as Kimberly serves herself before she sits as well. Jake takes the spoon next, scooping a heap of caramelized fruit chunks onto his plate. When he's done, he slides the plate down to Electra. The dish smells wonderful. Especially since the last thing he smelled that's anywhere this good was probably the soup that Asna gave him earlier. He takes the arcane gold out of his mouth and carefully props the end that he was chewing on up onto his plate, the metal stick already covered in teeth marks. Serving spoon in hand, he fills his plate with what remains of the cooked food, an amalgamation of half firm, half squishy fruit cubes, and an ooze of thickened fruit juices. He takes a bite. The fruit is still warm as it lands on his tongue, gushing with juice still trapped within the pieces that squirt as they are crushed between his teeth. The sugar and flavors swirl together in a storm of deliciousness. He has to pause and let out a hum of delight before swallowing. Kimberly lets out a light chuckle. Is it that good? Electro nods back. To him, her cooking is to the stars and back again. But the happiness doesn't last long before turning to a twisted sorrow. The only other wizard he trusts with cooking excellent meals would be Kelsey. Even if she always brought down the temperature of any room she stood in, whatever hot dish she made would always bring a little joy to his cycle. His second bite lingers halfway between his plate and his mouth, his smile straining. So, how are you doing? Kimberly asks Jake, the two not paying Electro any mind. Still a bit dizzy, Jake replies with a heavy sigh. Asna said it should go away at first light. That doesn't make me feel any better. Healing isn't a completely painless process, Kimberly comments with a half smile of sympathy. I wish it was, Jake grumbles. Well, don't be in such a foul mood, Jake. We've got a guest. Sure, boss. Kimberly, seeing that she's mostly failed at trying to get Jake to perk up, runs her free hand through one of her bright blue pigtails. Well, just eat as fast as you can and then you can go rest. Right, Jake mutters between bites. The room descends into silence as the 3 wizards return to their meal. Exhaustion hangs heavy in the air. It's been a long cycle after all, for every being. Finally taking a second bite, Electra's thoughts still fixate on Kelsey. When was the last time he saw her? He was leaving a house. She was clawing at his arm, trying to get him to stay. But once she realized that he wasn't going to listen, she gave him a hug, a tight one, her cold hands pressing against his back, not wanting to let him go. He knows there was a short conversation, but he can't recall their words. Then he left, and that was that. The longer he thinks, trying to recall the moment, his head slowly begins to pound with a growing headache. He sets his fork down to rub his temples. Are you all right? Kimberly asks, noticing his movements. Yes, he replies automatically, lowering his hands. Jake is gone from the table now, though his plate still remains. He left so silently, Electra didn't even notice. He forces a small smile and picks up his fork again, waving it over his plate. It's really good. Kimberly nods back at him. Oh, thank you. Does he not have a bed? Electra asks, nodding in the vague direction of the sofa. No, not yet, Kimberly replies. I don't have an extra room for him, and we're not ready for sleeping together yet. Oh, are you two dating? Yeah. How long? 3 years now, Kimberly beams. We're planning to marry sometime after he graduates. Electra smiles along with her. You know, I was married after 3 years. You're married? Kimberly's eyes instantly dart to his hands. Well, he sighs, holding up his right hand, revealing his absent ring. I guess I'm not anymore. Kimberly's eyes widen with shock. What? Why? Who was it? Electro just shakes his head back at her. I don't want to talk about it too much right now. I don't know if she really broke it off or not yet. But I think you found a good match. That's good to hear. Kimberly looks down at the table, lacing her fingers together as a tinge of anxiety flashes across her face. I haven't introduced him to my family yet. They're the date within your own magic branch types. I know Ethan wants to interrogate you more next cycle, but I think my family can help too, so I'm a little nervous. Yeah, my wife's family was that way too. I get it. Did they like you? Of course they did! But, you know, accepting me as marriage material was a different story. That's kind of how things go in this case. Just don't try and push them too much, and they'll get used to him soon enough. A weak chuckle escapes his mouth. That's what I did, and it did not go very well. Kimberly lets out an amused snort. Thanks for the advice. I'm just brimming with it, he laughs. He finishes his dinner and stands from the table. Need help cleaning up? No, thank you, I'll be fine. You should be resting too. Kim's right. Shadow buzzes in Electro's ear. You might feel fine now, but that's only because I'm here. When you get your shadow back, you'll need to carry yourself. Rest and exercise should be your priority. Gee, thanks. He grumbles under his breath, turning back to Kimberly. Have a good night, then. Sleep well, Kimberly replies. Chapter 5. The narrow side streets of Asandra leave a little side-by-side walking room as Kimberly guides the way to her family home. With first light having just broken, many windows are still dark and homes silent. Jake is somewhat eager. This will be his first time meeting his girlfriend's family. They did talk about them long ago, about their expectations for her to find a cryomancer. So as much as he is excited, he is also nervous. Oh, I hope they're awake, Kimberly mutters, an anxious frown plastered on her face. Jake wraps an arm around her shoulder in an attempt to comfort her. One of them should be. I know, but hey, it'll be fine. How can they not like me? Well, Kimberly trails off, shaking her head. They eventually reach a crossroad, and Kimberly points to a nearby house on the corner. One made of gray brick, and a bright blue door adorned with a white snowflake symbol. There it is, she says, a hint of joy in her voice. Even if she's nervous, she's still somewhat eager to see her parents again. The pair approach the door, and Kimberly gives it a good knock. Looking up and down the street, Jake takes note of the empty, sleeping street. He gets the feeling that not a lot of students live in this part of the neighborhood. Eventually, the lock of the front door clicks, and it swings open to reveal a bleary-eyed wizard dressed in a soft blue robe and white slippers. The wizard's eyes widen in an instant when he sees Kimberly at the doorstep. "Kimstar!" he exclaims with a smile. "It's so nice to see you." "Hi, Dad," she replies, mirroring his smile. "And who's this with you?" her dad asks, turning to Jake. "A friend?" "My name is Jake," Jake replies, "and I'm her boyfriend." The wizard's smile strains as he slowly nods. "I see." "Can we come in?" Kimberly asks. "I have some questions for you." "Of course." Her dad steps aside and waves the two students inside. Kimberly enters first, wiping her shoes on the carpet laid in front of the door, then quickly takes them off and sets them on a small shoe rack on the left. Once she's out of the way, Jake steps inside and does the same, unbuckling his armored boots and setting them next to the rack, as they're a bit too big for it. There's a set of stairs in front of him, with a small hallway leading deeper into the house, and a doorway to his right where he spots Kimberly standing, watching him, probably waiting. She waves him into the room before disappearing. "Would you two like something to drink?" Kimberly's dad calls as Jake enters the room. It's a small living room, with another doorway leading into a dining room. "What do you have?" Kimberly asks. "Warm drinks, cold drinks, water." Kimberly just rolls her eyes. "I'm good." "I'll take some water, thanks," Jake replies. Kimberly takes a seat on the sofa, pressed up against the rightmost wall of the room, and waves for Jake to join her. He sits on her left, the two now facing a small table and two armchairs draped in blue. As a matter of fact, the entire house, floors, walls, ceiling, furniture, is shaded in different blues and whites, accented with ice magic iconography. "I can't believe you grew up here," Jake mutters, looking around. "I told you they were diehard cryomancers," she replies. "Yeah, but..." "I know, Jake. I know." Kimberly's dad emerges from the dining room, a clear cup in one hand and a steaming mug in the other. He sets the cup down on the table in front of Jake, then takes a seat in one of the armchairs across from the two students. "Kim, why don't you go wake up Ian?" her dad suggests with a light smile. "I'm sure he'd appreciate having you jump on him like you used to." Sure," she replies. She stands slowly, casting Jake a small glance of sympathy before leaving him alone with her dad. The two quietly listen to her tromp up the staircase. "Boyfriend," her dad eventually hums, taking a sip from his mug. "Yes," Jake nods. He looks at the cup of water before him, unsure if he should bury his face in it or leave it where it stands. "I'm sure she mentioned our expectations for her," he continues. "She did." Her dad takes another slow sip of whatever he made for himself, his expression unreadable. "With our lineage, this family cares more for carrying on our legacy first and foremost." "That being..." "She never told you?" "No." Kimberly hasn't talked a whole lot about her family life, aside from her funny childhood memories. Anything beyond that she's been vague or cagey about. He never pushed it, though. If she didn't want to share, that's her decision. "Our family roots trace all the way back to the sister of the General of Ice," her dad reveals. "Ice magic runs in our blood." Jake nods, finally reaching for his cup of water. That certainly explains why Kimberly's parents want her to marry another cryomancer at the very least. "She never mentioned anything like that," Jake comments. "That's understandable." Her dad sighs into his mug. "She was never all that interested in our legacy. You could say we live on the less influential side of the family tree." Isn't the ICE representative for the council also related to the general's sister? Jake asks. Yes, he's a distant relative. Her dad nods. Jake's shoulders sag as he takes a long sip of his water. No wonder Kimberly omitted such details of her life. She's already super strong, being a blessed wizard and all, but also having such an extensive and powerful family lineage. Laughter rings from the hallway as footsteps descend the stairs. Kimberly enters the room again, followed by a second man, also in the same blue robe as her dad wears. Jake, this is Ian Stonebreaker. Kimberly introduces the second wizard. My stepdad. And Jay Starsong, my actual dad. Stepdad? Jake hums as she sits on the sofa again, Ian taking his place in the other armchair. Dad remarried when I was 3, Kimberly replies with a small shrug. You're the boyfriend, I hear, Ian remarks with a jovial laugh. Jay attempts a weak smile and sips from his mug once more. Oh, our little snowflake is all grown up, Ian continues merrily. When's the wedding? Ian, Jay mumbles. Come now, Ian replies with an eye roll. If they have children, that's assuming they want children. If they don't, then what's the point in fretting over who she dates? The two adults turn to the pair expectantly. Jake, nervousness erupting in his gut, buries his face in his water reflexively. Kimberly musters a weak grin back at her parents. We've not talked about kids yet, she admits. So there's still a chance, Ian says to Jay. Let her be happy. Jay doesn't reply, his expression seeming to darken. I hope he wasn't hard on you, Kimberly says to Jake. Dad is a bit of a stick in the snow. It's fine, Jake replies weakly. He just told me about the family legacy. Kimberly's expression wilts instantly. Oh, It's okay, Kim, Jake reassures her. I get why you didn't want to mention it. Still, Kimberly shoots Jay a sharp glare. She probably wanted to be the one to tell him, not her dad. I'm sorry, Snowflake, Jay says flatly. Kimberly, in response, folds her hands on her lap and dons her business face. I didn't come here to talk about Jake. I came to ask about Mom. The smile on Ian's face strains as Jay shifts in his seat, unease descending on the two adults. What about her? Jay asks. Did she mention any being by the name of Electro? Ian shakes his head definitively. Never heard that name before. Jay, however, takes a long sip from his mug and stares down at the table that separates him from his daughter. She did, he finally speaks. Though that was decades ago by now. How do you know of him? We're housing him, Kimberly replies, and he wants to know where she is. Excuse me? Jane leans forward in his seat, eyes wide with panic. He's where? It'd take too long for me to explain everything, and time is the one thing we don't have a lot of right now. Do you know where Mom might be? Jay, who is that? Ian asks. One of Kelsey's old friends, Jay replies with a heavy sigh, sitting back in his chair again. He cradles his mug in his hands, staring into it long and hard, thinking to himself. Do you remember Ryan? That Voiter? Ian spits. How can I not? You know Ryan too, Jake breathes. I was a term below, Ian replies, and Jay was 2 terms above. Jay nods. Sadly, we attended ASM with Orion, that troublemaker. though it helped that we were studying different magics. He also was the one that broke your mother's heart." "How?" Kimberly inquires. "The Electromancer's failed quest," Jay replies. "One that Ryan pressured him into taking. Kelsey didn't agree, but Ryan persisted. It tore them all apart. And she felt like she couldn't forgive herself if she stayed on Ascendra. I wasn't willing to move with her, so you and I stayed here. And I'm glad we did." He turns to Ian with a warm grin. "He really was a void terror," Ian only sighs, shaking his head disappointedly. "What was Ryan like?" Kimberly asks. "Vain," the two parents say at once, though Ian continues with, "That's all I remember about him. I never met Electro, though." "He wasn't very social," Jay replies. "He usually went to the training grounds after his class finished." "Oh, one of those types." "Well, he was certainly a vindictive one with an odd sense of humor." How did he ever come to associate with Ryan, then?" "The two were sparring partners, I believe." "So where did Mom go?" Kimberly steps in, steering the conversation back on track. "I wouldn't be surprised if she wound up on Gardal," Jay answers. "She often talked about building a cabin up on the side of Frostfall. Maybe she did that. Although..." He pauses, licks his lips, and inhales slowly. "If you go searching for her, don't bring Electro with you." "Why?" A haunted look befalls Jay, and he replies with a stiff voice. "That's for her to tell you. Or him, for that matter." "He doesn't remember anything, though." "Good for him, then," Jay spits. Ian gives his husband a sideways glance, his eyes full of questions and his face one of worry. "You haven't told me any of this," he says quietly. "I promised her not to speak of the matter," Jay replies. "It was a hard time for all of us." A heavy silence descends on the group, Jay's words still ringing in the air. Jake takes a cautious sip of water, his eyes darting between the two parents. Out of the corner of his eye, he sees Kimberly turn towards him, and so he turns to look back at her. Her expression is flat, and he doesn't know if what is in her eyes is confusion or annoyance. If it's annoyance, he understands. They're so close to getting a straight answer, only to fall short. Whatever Jay promised to keep silent about, he sure is sticking to it, which only makes him more curious as to what happened. "Thanks, Dad," Kimberly finally speaks, turning back to her parents. "That's, I think, all we needed." Jay nods. "If and when you find her, maybe we can talk about it." "Right." Kimberly stands stiffly, gesturing for Jake to follow her. "We'll see ourselves out." "Well, it was great seeing you again, Snowflake," Ian chirps. "It was nice to meet your boyfriend, too." "I'll be sure to visit again," Kimberly nods, a small smile managing to slip through her stony exterior. Thanks for the water," Jake nods, placing his cup down and standing. The two parents nod back at him as he turns to leave with his girlfriend, each wearing different smiles. One is genuinely happy, and the other tense and haunted. "We're back!" comes Kimberly's call as the bell to the store jingles below. Electro lets out a thankful sigh and sinks into the sofa, clearly weary from all of Ethan's questions. He couldn't help it. The more information they have, the better. "Well," he calls over his shoulder as he hears Kimberly and Jake tromp up the stairs. When they appear, Kimberly also appears drained as Jake pats her shoulder. "We got what we could." Jake is the one to speak. "She might be living on Frostfall Mountain, or probably near it." "Makes sense for her to return there," Ethan nods. That was where one of the shards was found. Frostfall, Kimberly breathes, perking up. Really? Yep, Electro nods. I was shocked to hear too. The other one was inside the Solari Pyramid. So close, Jake mutters in awe. Yes, it's surprising. Ethan nods. At least now we can try and find Kelsey. Any clue where Ryan might be? Kimberly asks. No, the pyramid is the only thing we have to go off of right now. It might do us some good if we looked around there as well. Electro shifts on the sofa, appearing to get ready to stand. If Kel's on Frostfall, then actually, Kimberly interrupts him quickly, making the Electromancer pause. It might be better if we go and get her without you. Why? Electro asks, astonished by her words. Something happened. We don't know what specifically, but it might be better if we explain what's going on to her first before she sees you again. Electro sits still on the sofa, poised perfectly in the middle of his motion to rise, his muscles tense. His face is one of bewilderment, his gaze hollow. Ethan wouldn't be surprised if he tries to pick a fight in protest. This is one of his old school friends they're talking about, after all. The moment passes. The Electromancer sits back down on the sofa once more, defeated. Maybe you're right. He just shakes his head and leans to his left, propping his elbow on the armrest and placing his hand on his forehead. There's still time before classes, Kimberly says, breaking the silence. Me and Jake can go to Frostfall and see if we can find her this cycle. Ethan folds his arms and nods. Sounds perfect to me. Would you mind if I came along? Why? Kimberly asks. Weren't you going to look into the pyramid? Ethan presses his lips together. He was, initially. That was his plan. Though, the more he thought about it. I don't really know much about what happened there, Electro had told him earlier. I know he went with the Cerberus, and I know that she had to open the special room and was the one that brought the shard to him. But that's about it. Do you know who the Cerberus was? He had inquired. I know they had a fling. I think she was the princess at the time. Although I might be wrong. I know he talked about a princess for a long while. That princess Electro mentioned, which he's sure he's correct about, might be the current queen of Mirage. So if Ryan needed her when he went to Solari, then they'll surely need the help of the crowned prince, Lucre, once again. Maybe Amber would like to see him. It's been a while since those two have talked to each other after all, and maybe, just maybe, he can convince Blaze to join them. It'd do him some good to get out of his dorm for a little while. Maybe it will help to ease his animosity with, well, every being. Besides, if Electro's shadow shows up on Gardal at all, then he'll have a second chance to put things right again, and he'd not want to miss such an opportunity. If they can stop it in its tracks, then there'd be no need to go searching for Ryan. If Electro's shadow is up there, then I can try again to return it to its body. He finally speaks. If you two run out of time, then I can stay and finish the search. But the pyramid... I was thinking about asking Amber and Lucre if they could look there for us. Ethan replies with a slight smile. After all, the pyramid used to belong to the Cerberus, and it'd make Amber happy. It'll be safe. I hope. A flash of worry crosses Kimberly's face, though it quickly disappears in favor of a small grin and an understanding nod. So we're going now, then? Jake asks. Well, maybe when first-term classes end, Ethan replies. I can't necessarily ask her anything right now, though I do have something to do real quick, so maybe by the ASM archway when the bell rings. Will do, Kimberly nods. Ethan flashes them one final smile, then takes his leave by stepping through one of the room's shadows. The coldness of the dark brushes against his skin momentarily as he wills himself to the boys' dorm rooms. On his second step, the darkness recedes, and he appears in the hallway of where he wants to be. He counts the doors as he goes. Though he doesn't need to do it, it provides him with a small distraction from the impending encounter. When he reaches Blaze's dorm, he pauses. He stands facing the door, contemplating. While he still cares about the naturist, is this really such a good idea? He probably dislikes Amber as much as he dislikes Ethan right now. There's a good chance he'll just outright refuse without letting Ethan ever speak a word of the situation. He inhales, closes his eyes, and knocks. Knock, knock, knock. He opens his eyes again to silence. As he waits for a response, his cape weighs heavier on his shoulders as he wonders if Blaze is even in there to begin with, or knows that it's him at the door somehow and is refusing to answer. He taps his fingers against the sides of his legs anxiously. Then he decides to knock again. Knock, knock. Go away! Blaze's muffled shout sounds from the other side of the door. Come on, Blaze. Go away! Blaze repeats, his tone much more curt. It's important, Ethan tries. His words echo up and down the hallway, but this time Blaze doesn't reply to him. I can't talk in the hallway, he adds with a heavy sigh. Please, just hear me out. Still, there's nothing but silence. Blaze? Nothing. Answer me! Nothing. Ethan shakes his head. He doesn't want to have to do this, but Blaze isn't leaving him with much of a choice. He rolls back his shoulders and stands a little straighter before stepping forward. With ease, he passes through the wooden door, the darkness warping around him as he does so, and emerges on the other side into Blaze's dorm. Blaze, who sits at his desk, turns his head as if sensing his presence, then lets out a yelp of surprise and promptly falls out of his chair. Stars! Is the first thing he says, followed by, You stars forsaken shadow! How on ASTRIA did you— Ethan shakes his head back at him in disappointment, the motion making the naturist pause as he finally tries to process the scene before him. To him in every sense, Ethan should not have been able to enter his dorm. He has tried not to do it either, out of respect for his privacy, but not now. I'm not going to play nice with you this time, Blaze, he says, so listen closely. Amber will be leaving Cassandra shortly, going to Mirage and then Solari. Whether or not you decide to accompany her, if she returns with anything as small as a scratch on her, I will rip out your shadow and leave your body here until I am done with it, because at least it is nicer than you. Do you understand? Blaze remains on the floor, stunned. His eyes are wide in shock, probably at Ethan's dark and demanding tone. Though, to be frank, he'd most likely not listen to anything less than a threat, and he knows that Ethan can very well follow through on just about any threat he makes. His friend's face twitches, wanting to turn into a scowl, but daring not to show his distaste for the situation all the same. Well? Ethan asks. Finally, Blaze lets out a reluctant sigh. Yes. Wait for her by the school's archway, and you better not give her any trouble. She can explain what's going on, if she's in a good mood. With that, he turns on his heel and leaves the way he came in, right through the door. Amber's heart flutters the moment she sees Ethan posted by the dorm building, his eyes staring at the door to her hall intently. When he sees her, a smile spreads across his lips as he waves her over. Ethan, she says as she nears, her textbook hugged close to her chest as per usual. You're here. He nods back at her. Yes, actually, I have something to ask of you. It involves a bit of Mirage and a bit of Solari. Amber's breath catches in her throat, and her heart skips a beat, excitement building in her chest. "What is it?" she asks eagerly. "You remember us talking about Ryan and Kelsey, right?" "Yes." "Well, we might have a lead as to where Kelsey might be, so Kim, Jake, and I are going to check it out. Finding Ryan, on the other hand, is proving to be a little bit more difficult than we anticipated." Amber nods, waiting for him to make his request. Her heart flutters and pounds and squeezes, almost as if it were going to burst if she's left waiting any longer. "We know he went to the Great Pyramid with a Cerberus of royal descent, and if it's there where he found the first shard. Could you get Lucre and try and retrace Ryan's footsteps for me?" "Yes," Amber says without hesitation, her body already pumped with energy and ready to go. For the longest time, she wondered if leaving Sandra on another adventure would be what she needed to rediscover herself. Now, finally, she has that opportunity. "Here." Ethan hands her 2 keystones, one a light cream and the other a rich orange. "This one will take you to Mirage, and the other to Solari. I let the Shasks know that you'll be coming. Just ask for Sir Taylor and you should be fine. Do you remember how to get to town?" Town, referring to the town on Mirage the 2 of them were sheltered in, hosted by a kindly old Cerberus called Anasi. She nods. Lucre told her which direction it was in from the archway before he left, though that was half a season ago by now. She hopes she still remembers. "There should be another being waiting for you by the campus archway." Ethan tacks on at the end with an apologetic smile. "Don't get mad. He needed to get out." "Okay?" Amber breathes back, slightly confused. "I should get going," Ethan tells her, turning to leave. "The other 2 are waiting on me. You should get going as soon as you can as well. We don't have a whole lot of time on our hands, you know." "I know." "Good luck, Amber. And thank you for everything. It's what friends are for." "Right." And with that, Ethan disappears into the shadows, leaving her standing all alone. Still, she shakes with excitement. When's the last time she felt this excited about anything? She can't remember, figuratively and literally, but it feels refreshing. Immediately, she makes her way to the campus archway, ready to see Lucre and explore the Great Pyramid of Solari. The third terms get to go on class trips to the pyramid, so she has yet to experience its majesty. Rumor has it, it's quite a sight to behold. As the archway comes into view, her spirits lower just a slight bit. The one and only Blaze, local shut-in and sour fruit, is posted near the archway, his arms folded and his scowl radiating furious reluctance. Now Ethan's words make sense. Sensing her stare as she approaches, Blaze looks up from the ground, and his face goes from dark to stony neutral in a snap. Amber pulls her best disinterested scowl and raises her chin into the air. "Fancy seeing you here," she says. "Likewise," he grumbles back. "So, what got you out of your den again?" "Ethan. Threatening me." "Typical." "Excuse me?" "Well, you just seem the type to only respond to threats." "Sassy, aren't we?" Amber just rolls her eyes and turns to the archway, the keystones growing cold in her hands. "Can we just go?" "Whenever you want." Amber steps up to the archway, holding up the Mirage keystone high above her. The runes on the archway glow in response, and a rip opens in its center, revealing a wall of orange dunes and letting through a blast of warm air. "That's a lot of sand," Blaze mutters under his breath. "Oh, just wait," Amber tells him with a grin. And that is where we are stopping for today. Threats really are a really good motivator. They are. They really are. I mean, hey, it worked. It worked on Blaze. It can work on anyone else, too. Wow. I was expecting that to go a lot faster than it did. I took up all of my time, but I will stick around for a little while to do a Q&A too, because that's what I promised. So, that is Act 1 of Bloodbound. I believe most of you in the chat have already read through most of Bloodbound, so I guess, like, within Act 1, favorite parts, if you would like to share. I love Balze. I love Balze too, Shove. Balze, best character. He is such a sad little man in the beginning of Bloodbound. Echo loves Balze too. Sorry. Yeah, once again, apologies for all of the stumbles. I don't know if you could tell, but my voice has really died, especially in the last chapter. Again, I'm not used to doing all this, like, reading aloud. I used to do it a lot when I was younger. Now I don't anymore, and I really need to get back into it. It would help for doing big reading streams like this. Certainly. And I have a lot of material. So who knows, I might do another stream or a video where I just read some of my other miscellaneous writing. So apart from, like, working on the third book, a lot of the stuff that I've been working on is fanfic of the game that we shall not be naming. But it's also the only other thing I've worked on. So I'm in my catch-22 of I I have some characters that I really like that I've done a lot of fanfic of, but also I've also sworn off doing that kind of stuff. I really enjoyed the part where Jake and Kim visited Ian and Jay, especially since I already read the entire book and I'm now noticing some more things. Well, see, that's also the fun part about, like, if you already know what happens later on in the book, and then you reread the earlier parts of the book, you see that I'm actually smart and not stupid, and I have IQ. I love my brain. I had a lot of fun with Echo, Echo, please, no, have faith in me. Have faith in me. This Bloodbound was not only, like, I'd say the most fun to write at the moment of the three. Granted, I'm still working on the third, so it's still very hard to say. But it was also the most fun to plan, specifically with this very intricate social web that I have going on. Like, Font of Magic aside, just the family stuff was a joy to plan out. The book did make me gasp one time near the end. Good. Should've, would've, we'll do it again. I enjoyed live reading very much. I managed to finish Shadow as well. I saw, and you too can see Shub's drawing of Shadow by joining my little Discord server. It is also linked in the description down below. I believe she posted it there. Did you post it there? Yes, you posted it there. Amazing, amazing Shadow. Love it. You make it look so cool. I mean, it is very cool. but like you make it look like the true coolness. Shub is very talented, folks. Join the server and see all of her other art. How addictive is the chewy thing Electro likes again? It's okay, Echo. You're cool in your own right. I mean, look, we could all admire Echo's art, which once again, thank you to Echo for doing the art for the streams, this one and all the ones that we're going to be doing over the rest of the month of June. It's Shadow! So, I'll let you in on a little secret. Arcane Gold is basically just fantasy cigarettes. So, however addictive a cigarette is, that's kind of that, but like Arcane Gold. But instead of nicotine, it's like some kind of like magical, like magical and or metallic compound within the specific type of gold, because the metal in Astria is, well, there's like some overlap in the naming, like they have copper, gold, iron. They have two different types of iron, but they all have different properties. So gold is surprisingly sweet, discovered when some random miner decided to stick it in their mouth one day and went, this tastes like candy, and now it's an entire industry. So it's like fantasy smoking, but you destroy your teeth via chewing it rather than destroy your lungs via smoking it. Fantasy cigarette, amazing. I'm so original. I have Snap, which is basically Fantasy War. I have Arcane Gold, which is fantasy cigarettes. I have all of these different metals, which is fantasy versions of other metals that exist. I mean, if you read any fantasy book, you could probably like point at some of the things and go like, oh yes, it's just fantasy, insert modern thing here, right? It's not just me. I love your shadow art, Chub. It is great. It is so cool. Lucre's next? Oh, I can't wait. I can't wait to see how you draw Lucre. Is it gonna be with a tail or with the legs? How else are beings supposed to find out what tastes good if they don't put random things in their mouths like toddlers? Well, even cavemen started out with just randomly eating things and figuring out if it was poisonous or not. So it's part of the evolutionary process, I guess you could say. Both. Ooh. Interesting. I'm very excited. Can't wait. Two versions, tail and leg. Lucre's tail doesn't get shown off nearly as much. I believe in the first draft of Bloodbound, Lucre was involved in a fight where he used his tail a lot. But then I think when I was rewriting Shadowbound, I decided to include it in his fight with Jake's shadow. And I don't think he uses it a whole lot in Bloodbound, if I recall correctly. And not me, the author of my book, forgetting what I've put in my own book. But also, this is par for the course because there is so much book information in my brain. I have to spoil my favorite author. Thank you. What would I do without you, Shub? I don't know what I would do without you. You are special. You hold a special place on this channel. Respect to all those who have fallen while discovering extremely poisonous items that look like food. 07. To our ancestors that died along the way. Nothing? Yeah, I would be nothing. I would have written Shadowbound, and then I would have bottomed out because Shub wasn't here. But no, now I have Bloodbound, and now I'm working on the third book. Which, by the way, if you've seen my my Substack, my recent Substack post, which my Substack is linked in the description down below, there is additional writing related to the world of Astria. It's called The Great War if you want to check it out. I haven't worked on it in a while, but there's a lot of content there to get you started. But if you've seen the recent post that I made on my Substack in my author's corner, I believe the statistics were what I currently have for the third book. It's like a 10th, or just under a 10th of the way, like 10% of the total Shadowbound word count, and like 7.5, 8% of Bloodbound's total word count. Which I feel like the numbers are a little bit skewed because that is also including the copyright page and the author, the about the author page at the end. So it's probably like closer to 10% and 8% respectively. Poor Echo being like, where's my phrase? Oh, I'm sorry, Echo. I love you too. But then again, I kind of have to love you. It is required. What color is the table? Table color. Brown. Which I think that brown would be nice. The brown that you're using right now. Oh, for the chair? Okay. Then maybe it would be like a darker brown off of that. Don't. Why do you make this harder? Why do you make this harder for me? No, like a dark. Ugh. I was gonna say dark oak, but I don't know if they spruce. They have spruce. It's like I don't think they have oak trees anymore. Everything would be made of like spruce or like old fruit tree wood. Like when the tree dies, they harvest the wood and turn it into furniture and stuff. Because in Astria, we recycle everything. English professors will be like, the color of this table is meant to signify the rich lifestyle of the family and the mysterious nature of their past. Okay, that's also something that, like, I've been contemplating is if my book is ever read in a class, I don't think it will be, like, studied. It is not anywhere near on the level as, like, 1984 or Fahrenheit 451 or Catcher in the Rye or any of those other books that you're supposed to read at some point for, like, a report. Lord of the Flies. all those. I don't think it's anywhere near that level where an entire lesson will be dedicated to it, but what if there was a lesson dedicated to, at the very least, Shadowbound, maybe even Bloodbound. Bloodbound narrower eyes because granted it's the second book, but like what would a class even talk about? Like how would they interpret my writing? Like all of my author commentary stuff aside, and like any other future interviews, podcasts, videos, whatnot that I do explaining like what things mean and my thought process behind it, like all of that aside and just reading the book on its face, what in the world are they going to learn about? Friendship is magic. Yep, friendship is really magic. In Shadowbound especially, yes. Oh my god, it's My Little Pony all over again. My Little Astria. I hear you laughing over there. Together we are Shadowbound. The true Shadowbound are all of the beings we forced to read the book along the way. Something like that. I yapped about Shadowbound to my English professor and she was really invested. Oh, that's nice. Good to hear. See, I need educational institutions to be more interested in Shadowbound so that we can answer the question of what would a class look like studying Shadowbound. I have a feeling everyone is going to interpret Ethan wrong, but then again, if they do, then that's my fault. I did have to keep in mind that I shouldn't be comparing your books to the generational masterpieces. I'd say like you probably should be like not trying to compare it to Harry Potter at the very least. Because that is like the most made comparison to at least Shadowbound that I've gotten. And it's like I don't know how or why you are comparing it, because wizards, I guess. But like that they're together we are Resident Emo bound. Apart we are Cheesebound. When will Cheesebound be released? I need Gymbound. Chat, I'm gonna start a spin-off series where it's just gonna be, insert thing, bound. It's gonna be the Bound series. It's just gonna be random stories related to whatever the titles. Car bound. You're stuck in your car. I sponsor Bound stories. Oh, right, like Rick Riordan. Yeah! Y'all, if you write a book something bound in the world of Astria, then I will come and I will put my stamp of approval on it. Mostly joking, but wouldn't it be cool if we did that? Like, that would be epic, because, I don't know if anyone knows this, but, at least Rick Riordan, the guy that wrote the Percy Jackson series, he's been, like, putting his stamp of approval on other, like, very, similar books and, like, subject or style or whatever, like, he's been doing that lately, and I believe he gets, like, royalties from it too whenever he does that. Guys, get on the fanfic. Oh yes, I would love to try and astroturf my own fanfic, but unfortunately, if I'm the one writing it, then won't it be then won't it be canon? It's the catch-22 of, like, I'm trying to write fanfic for my own stuff, but then it will horseshoe back around into being canon. Automatic canon approval, you put Bound in the title. No, we have to start the trend where literally everything related to the ASTRIA trilogy is just blank Bound. No ifs, ands, or buts. You have to have Bound as your suffix for anything. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be chaos. Attic Bound. That would be fun. I throw Ethan at Attic and see what works. The similarities end with Harry Potter really ends at the magical school setting, which is far too vague to be claimed by one story. That is fair. I'd say, like, Harry Potter popularized the magic school setting, but other than that, yeah, that's about it. Crossover Bound coming in 20 years. At this rate, it might take that long. I'm going to write fanfic. Yes! Honestly, though, then yeah, that's the other thing I've been wondering about. It's like, the fanfic of Shadowbound and or Bloodbound, just like of the trilogy. Like, what would that be? Like, what would you all have the characters do if you were to write a fanfic with my characters? What would they be doing? What got you to name the book Bloodbound? Was it just that the story goes into family ties? Yeah, for the most part. Shadowbound was a lot about, Ethan and shadows, naturally. FNAF meets Shadowbound? Oh my god. No. Idle AU fanfic. Oh yeah, right, you mentioned that before. I think that would be fun. Anyway, so yeah, so Shadowbound was dealing a lot with shadows, naturally. Bloodbound, lots of family drama. And Family Bound doesn't quite ring the same as Bloodbound does. Bloodbound's a lot more dramatic, right? And then the third book is named the way it is because of Ethan acts gay in front of his girlfriend. She cries. No. Help me. Save me from this person. Shadow goes out into the city and experiences more things it missed while it was gone. Oh yeah, that too. I mean, it has a really big sweet tooth. So, like, I can see it maybe, like, going out, trying all the cakes, getting a bit of an upset stomach because all of that sugar, and then it's like, okay, well, what else is around here to do? You do draw me art, and I love you for that. I'm gonna draw that BRB? What? You gotta draw what? Ethan being gay? Or something else? What? Guys, I know it's Pride Month, but really? Right now? Is it that important? Of course it was a reference. Also, why? Also, only you would know. If they don't hurry up, they won't get it out by the end of Pride Month. Well, shove, then get on it. Or something. I don't know. Ugh. Sure. Shout out to Ethan Yowie Pictures. Sorry I started drawing Wizard OC. Oh, that's okay. Look, we're reading a book about wizards. It is only understandable that you will wind up getting sidetracked by your own wizards. I throw magic in your face. Magic. So tomorrow, same time, same place, we will be getting into Act 2. Won't that be fun? It's gonna be the beginning of the adventures. We might see Lucre again. Or he might be dead. I don't know. You'll find out. You either read the book either read the book or be patient. I'm holding Lucre over an active volcano, and you don't know if what I have behind my back is a knife. You don't know. It could also be a water gun. The live stream begins just as I get done with a scheduled responsibility. Well, hey, you get to do your thing first, and then come and relax to well, you know what's coming up. AGM, I know you finished the book. All right, last call for any burning questions you have regarding the first act of Bloodbound. Don't you dare hurt the snake boy. Oh, don't worry. I won't hurt him too bad. No, Patrick. Mayonnaise is not an instrument. Also, you spelt mayonnaise wrong. I thought you were gonna stop at I don't cap and not finish it. Okay. What is one intrusive thought Electra probably had in this section of the book? Probably punching people. I mean, he wants to punch a lot of people, but I do think like it would be something related to punching people. He gotta flex his muscles. Gotta start hitting those pads. Those pads being people, apparently. Question very important. Does Blaze love me? Let me. Where's my D20? You got a nat 20. He does love you. See, if Electro wasn't in his weakened state at the moment, I think he would be out picking fights. He would pick a fight. He would want to fight Ethan. Definitely. Understandably so. That was expressed. All cool people have a D20 in arm's length at all times. True. I have many D20s on my desk. I have like maybe 4 or 5 different types of D20s. Insert please give. Yeah, that's right. I am a nerd. I play D&D. It's not derogatory if I don't take it as derogatory. I think the only other intrusive thought that Electra might have had, running off. Just running off, doing things, seeing what has changed. And you know, he's an adult, so he doesn't need supervision. But he is the I will run off, cause trouble, pick fights, and you can't stop me because something I'm an adult and you can't stop me. Adventure, yes, he would go on an adventure, but it would be not this kind of adventure. He would find Ryan not because Astria, like the fate of Astria is at stake, but because he just wants to settle a grudge. Like Astria could be actively blowing up, and he will still want to show all of his enemies who's boss, basically. Well, I'm gonna go give my voice a rest and grab a snack. Shadow is babysitter. Shadow is the babysitter. That or Electro would rope Shadow into all of his crazy schemes because he can, and he's cool like that. Well, thank you all for being here for this first reading. The readings are all free, so do feel free to share them around with people that may want to get into the book or you think might like the series, but they're wondering if it might be right for them. The live readings are a good way to get in for free, basically. And I will see you all for the next reading then. Shadow is irresponsible babysitter. It tries, but it has no life experience. So it fails, ultimately. Oh, wow. Have a good time zone, everyone.